Chapter 1504. I can't figure it out either. Lysianer shook her head and said with some distress, if it was really the people from the Dada Cultivation Chamber of Commerce who took Xiaoyu away, there's no need for them to look for me to work for them. I remember. Nye Xiaoyu's strength should not be higher than yours, right? Seeing Lysianer nod, Xiaoqin raised another doubt. The kidnappers are too strange. Why did they only take Nye Xiaoyu but not you who is more powerful? I thought of a reason. Lysianer revealed all the thoughts she had been pondering recently. Maybe some people from big sects or families took a fancy to Nye Xiaoyu's identity as a ghost cultivator and wanted to use her to get something or do something that ordinary people can't do. Otherwise they wouldn't have only taken Nye Xiaoyu and not me. Lysianer's guess was pretty close to the mark. The second head and the others kidnapped Nye Xiaoyu because of her identity as a zombie. However, they failed to get what they wanted because of a freak combination of factors. At this point, the three of them fell silent. They were worried about Nye Xiaoyu, whose whereabouts were unknown. Lysianer was the first to come back to her senses and asked, by the way, why did the two of you come to Qingyue town? Oh, we originally wanted to go to a place called the Green Demonic Valley, so we came here to ask about the route. Xiaoqin spread his hands and said helplessly, but after asking for a long time, no one in the town knew. Then we found you. At this point, Xiaoqin added, it's fine that we didn't find the Green Demonic Valley, but we found out that Nye Xiaoyu was taken away. It's simply adding insult to injury. As soon as Xiaoqin finished speaking, the two men sitting at the table next to him suddenly froze and looked at each other. One of the young men turned around eagerly and asked Xiaoqin, brother, you just said that you want to go to the Green Demonic Valley, right? My senior brother and I know that place, but can you tell us why you want to go to that dangerous place first? Hey. Aren't you guys too rude? How can you eavesdrop on others? Do you have any manners? Hongzhu immediately flew into a rage, glaring at the young man and snappily saying, besides, we don't even know each other. Even if it were you, you wouldn't easily tell your thoughts to a stranger, right? I think your EQ is worrying. The young man felt a little embarrassed after being scolded, but the older man quickly pulled him back. Then, with an embarrassed smile, he cupped his fists towards Hongzhu and the others and said, haha, I'm sorry, this junior brother of mine is a little too impulsive. I apologize on his behalf. Hongzhu rolled his eyes and ignored him. Xiaoqin shot an indifferent glance at the two people, but did not say anything. There was really no need to show any respect to these people who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The older man felt a little awkward when he saw that they were ignoring him. He took the initiative to introduce himself. I'm Wu Gang. He's my junior Doling. We're all disciples of the Huanqin Pavilion. I'm sure you've heard of him before. Oh, so it's the Huanqin Pavilion? Before Wu Gang could finish speaking, Xiaoqin put on a look of sudden realization. Yes, it's the Huanqin Pavilion. Wu Gang immediately beamed and nodded repeatedly. Halfway through his sentence, Xiaoqin's expression suddenly changed. He expressionlessly shook his head and coldly interrupted, I've never heard of it. Hongzhu and Lysianer could not help but laugh out loud. Xiaoqin was too evil. Not only did he deliberately cut off his words, he even went to tease them. At first Wu Gang was quite happy. As expected, there was no one who did not know the name of a sect. However, when he heard the second half of Xiaoqin's sentence, his smile immediately froze on his face. He did not know whether to laugh or cry as he tried to smooth things over. The Huanqin Pavilion is the #1 sect in the cultivation world. How could you not have heard of it? Little brother, you're quite humorous. All right. So what if I've heard of it? What are you guys trying to do? Intuition told Xiaoqin that the two people in front of him were definitely up to no good. They were either asking for help or trying to cheat some spiritual crystals. Anyway, they would not take the initiative to tell him the location of the Emerald Magic Valley. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Hee little brother, you're really straightforward. Wu Gang let out a sigh of relief. He and Do Ling failed their mission and failed to bring Tang Tang back to the Huanqin Pavilion. They were worried about it and drank in the town. They did not expect to bump into Xiaoqin, who was asking about the location of the Emerald Magic Valley. Naturally, they would not let go of such a good opportunity. Looking at Xiaoqin's indifferent expression, Wu Gang quickly explained, actually it's not a big deal. When we were eating just now, we accidentally heard you guys talking about going to the Emerald Magic Valley, but you don't know the exact location of the entrance. Coincidentally, I know the location of the entrance. As the saying goes, helping others is helping ourselves. So I thought, you want to tell us the condition of the entrance of the Emerald Magic Valley in exchange for me helping you get the item inside, right? Xiaoqin did not want to listen to Wu Gang's hypocritical words, so he directly interrupted him. Just say it. What do you want? Don't dawdle here. By the time you're done, it'll be too late. In Xiao Chen's opinion, since he knew that Nye Xiaoyu was in danger, he had to hurry up and get the treasure hidden by the Elder Heaven Ancestor in the Emerald Magic Valley as soon as possible. Then he would think of a way to save Nye Xiaoyu. Otherwise, he did not know what would happen if he delayed any longer. Wu Gang was a little stunned. He did not expect Xiao Chen to be so direct. After a pause, he smiled and said, "If that's the case, then I'll tell you the truth. Our fantasy pavilion needs a natural treasure that grows in the Emerald Magic Valley. It's called Amethyst Nefarious Lotus. If you can help us get it, you can ask for whatever benefits you want. As long as it's not too unreasonable, we can agree to it." Although he said that, a trace of viciousness flashed in Wu Gang's eyes. He thought to himself, after you hand over the Amethyst Nefarious Lotus, won't we have the final say in what you want? At that time we'll definitely cut you into pieces, you ungrateful brat. Amethyst Nefarious Lotus? Then let me think about it first. Naturally, Xiao Chen saw the look in Wu Gang's eyes, but he did not say anything. He raised his eyebrows calmly and put on a state of contemplation. Then he asked in the sea of consciousness, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, what's the use of the Amethyst Nefarious Lotus? Will it be dangerous to harvest it?" Chapter 1505. The Amethyst Nefarious Lotus is a good treasure. The Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice was somewhat emotional as he said faintly, "This time, in addition to finding my hidden treasure, I originally wanted you to find this thing in the dark green Devil Valley." "This thing is so popular? What is its use?" Xiao Chen's curiosity was immediately aroused. To put it bluntly, it is very simple. After a certain amount of processing, the Amethyst Nefarious Lotus can become a key material to rebuild the body, so I also hope that you can obtain it. The Elder Heaven Ancestor quickly gave an explanation. "In this way there will be a chance to build a new body, and I will also be able to have my own body, thus restoring my original appearance." Really? Xiao Chen's spirit was lifted and he couldn't help but be overjoyed. Helping the Elder Heaven Ancestor rebuild the golden body was something that he had always been thinking about. If he could find the relevant materials, he would go through water and tread on fire to do it. This was because Xiao Chen felt that he was currently weak in the immortal cultivation world. If the Elder Heaven Ancestor could smoothly rebuild the body, then in the future he would have a powerful helper in the immortal cultivation world. If he encountered a cultivator of a higher level than him, then he could join hands with the Elder Heaven Ancestor. The two of them would have a much higher chance of winning. Of course, the most important reason was because of the relationship between the Elder Heaven Ancestor and him as a disciple. Although Xiao Chen usually laughed leisurely and did not show any respect to the Elder Heaven Ancestor, he still respected the Elder Heaven Ancestor very much. Usually, the Elder Heaven Ancestor had helped him too much, so Xiao Chen also hoped that he could have the opportunity to repay the favor. "Wait, Elder Heaven Ancestor." Xiao Chen was happy for a while, then he suddenly thought of something. He glanced at Wu Gang and Wu Gang, making them nervous, and then asked in his sea of consciousness, "They also want the Amethyst Nefarious Lotus, then wouldn't our goals conflict? I think I should get rid of them first." Not at the moment." Elder Heaven Ancestor didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Xiao Chen's sudden killing intent. He patiently analyzed, "I think you can let them lead you to the entrance of the dark green devilish valley first, and then you can go in and look for the purple mist Nefarious Lotus. If there are enough of this kind of heavenly treasure, there's no harm in sharing some with them. If it's not enough, you can just say that you didn't find it." Hearing Elder Heaven Ancestor's words, Xiao Chen pondered for a moment, then nodded slightly and made up his mind. At present, the most urgent thing was to enter the dark green devilish valley first. Whether it was the hidden treasures of Elder Heaven Ancestor or the purple mist Nefarious Lotus, they had to enter the dark green devilish valley first. Otherwise, he might not be able to enter the dark green devilish valley even after a year and a half. There were so many things waiting for him outside. As for the killing intent in Wu Gang's eyes, Elder Heaven Ancestor didn't notice it, but Xiao Chen did. However, he wasn't afraid of the other party's tricks. Since he had absolute strength, he was not afraid of any tricks. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen said to Wu Gang, "It's not a big problem to help you get the Amethyst Nefarious Lotus, but what benefits can you give me?" Seeing Xiao Chen's changing expression, Wu Gang felt a little uneasy. Now that Xiao Chen agreed, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. He hurriedly said, "Little brother, you can tell us what you want. Whether it's spirit crystals or heaven and earth treasures, we will try our best." "I'm not interested in spirit crystals." Xiao Chen interrupted Wu Gang and said lightly, Moreover, I know the situation in the dark green devilish valley. There are all kinds of heaven and earth treasures. After I enter, I won't lack any medicinal materials. So, you'd better offer something that is more attractive to me. Otherwise, there's no need to discuss this matter. This. Wu Gang opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Originally, he didn't plan to give Xiao Qin any benefits. His plan was to kill Xiao Qin and rob him of his treasures. Therefore, he only wanted to give Xiao Qin some spirit crystals and heaven and earth treasures. He didn't expect Xiao Qin to know everything about the dark green devilish valley and even took the opportunity to raise the price. Wu Gang was a little annoyed. He really didn't have anything that he could offer as a bargaining chip. Moreover, from Xiao Qin's point of view, Xiao Qin's words weren't unreasonable. After all, ordinary people couldn't survive in the dark green devilish valley. Therefore, as long as there was someone who could enter the dark green devilish valley, Wu Gang should spend a lot of money to promote him. However, he didn't plan to let Xiao Qin live. Hey, aren't you a little too much? We were afraid that you would run away after taking the spirit crystals. Now you're asking for a lot of spirit crystals. Dou Ling was very unhappy with Xiao Qin's arrogant attitude. He glanced at Xiao Qin and scoffed. Don't tell me that you don't want to enter the dark green devilish valley and only want to spend some spirit crystals? Oh, since you don't believe me, then forget it. Anyway, I don't care. I'll go my own way and you guys go your own way. Goodbye. Xiao Qin shrugged. He stood up and shouted at the waiter nearby, Waiter, it's time to settle the bill. All right, please wait for a moment. The waiter responded and immediately calculated the price of all the dishes on the table. Then he jogged over to them. No. Why are you in such a hurry? Let's talk this out. Wu Gang was shocked. He quickly grabbed the waiter who was running over and took out his spirit crystals to pay the bill for his table and Xiao Qin's table first. Although the waiter was confused, he thought that the two tables were the same when he saw that Xiao Qin didn't seem to have any objections. Hence, he didn't care too much and left after taking the spirit crystals. Brother, my junior brother hasn't seen much of the world. I apologize to you on his behalf. Please don't lower yourself to his level. Wu Gang smiled embarrassedly and tried to smooth things over. Suddenly, he had an idea and said, I think I heard that you're looking for a girl? Our Huanshan Pavilion is considered to have some power in the world of cultivation. Maybe we can help. Xiao Qin raised his eyebrows and took another step back to sit on the chair. He crossed his legs and swung them a few times before raising his head to look at Wu Gang. The corners of his lips curled up as he said calmly, At least you know what's good for you. I'm in the mood to chat now. Tell me, how do you plan to help? But since you're not interested in spirit crystals and treasures, I can ask the Huanshan Pavilion to send someone to help you find your companion as a reward for helping us get the amethyst black lotus. Wu Gang thought for a while and added, Of course, we'll give you a bigger reward after this is done. Is that okay? Chapter 1506. Wu Gang was at his wit's end. He could only hope that Xiao Qin would agree first. Whether he could get the purple nefarious lotus or not, he had to send Tang Tang into the Green Devil Valley first. In this way, even if he found someone to replace Tang Tang, he would have an explanation to the sect leader. Otherwise, he would definitely be scolded. As for finding someone, he could say whatever he wanted. Even if Wu Gang promised to pick down the stars from the sky and give them to Xiao Qin, he would agree without hesitation. Anyway, it was uncertain whether Xiao Qin could survive after entering the Green Devil Valley. Xiao Qin thought for a while, then nodded and agreed, Oh, all right. Seeing that you are so sincere, I will reluctantly agree to your request this time. Although Xiao Qin felt that Huanshan Xian definitely wouldn't spend a lot of effort to find Ye Xiaoyu, he had to come up with a suitable reason. After all, Xiao Qin didn't know how long he would be staying in the dark green demonic valley, and he didn't feel at ease letting Hong Zhu and Li Xiener search for Ye Xiaoyu alone. Now that he had Huanshan Xian's promise, at least the two women's safety was guaranteed while he was in the dark green demonic valley. Young man, you are so straightforward. Wu Gang finally breathed a sigh of relief. After thinking for a while, he smiled and asked, May I know the characteristics of the person you are looking for? Where did you lose contact with her? Please give us a simple description so that our sex people can focus on the search. The person I'm looking for is a girl. Her name is Nye Xiaoyu. She's an underworld cultivator. To put it bluntly, she's a zombie. She was with this Li Xiener earlier. Xiao Qin nodded and described how Nye Xiaoyu was captured. Li Xiener added on from the side. Okay. I will remember it all. Young man, please wait for a moment. Wu Gang nodded and turned around to pull Dou Ling. He said anxiously, Contact Elder Chen with the voice-transmitting spell immediately. Ask him to send as many people as he can to look for Miss Nie Xiaoyu. Dou Ling was still holding a grudge against Xiao Chen's attitude. His expression wasn't good and he walked slowly, not wanting to help Xiao Chen find the person. Wu Gang almost cursed out loud when he saw Dou Ling's reaction. He glared at him and pushed Dou Ling towards the direction of the room. Hurry up. Tell Old Chin to inform me as soon as he finds out the situation. After contacting him, contact the sect leader and tell him that we found someone else to enter the Green Devil Valley. After that, Wu Gang secretly pinched Dou Ling in a place where Xiao Chen couldn't see and gave him a look. Although Dou Ling was rash, he had worked with Wu Gang for many years. He was slightly stunned when he saw Wu Gang's gaze. He then realized what Wu Gang meant and quickly walked towards the room. Xiao Chen had been maintaining his divine sense, so he knew what the two of them were doing like the back of his hand. However, he did not say anything. The corner of his lips curled into a sneer as he slowly took a sip of tea. He did not even raise his eyelids. Wu Gang glanced in Xiao Chen's direction. When he realized that Xiao Chen was not paying attention to them, he heaved a sigh of relief. The burden in his heart was finally lifted. At first, Wu Gang was thinking if he could trick Xiao Chen with some small benefits. However, he didn't expect Xiao Chen to be so difficult to deal with. Wu Gang had to offer some practical benefits to convince Xiao Chen. However, it seemed like it was worth it. As long as Xiao Chen was willing to explore the Green Devil Valley, he would be able to answer to the sect leader. If Xiao Chen died in the Green Devil Valley, he could only blame himself for being unlucky. However, if he left the valley with the amethyst nefarious lotus, then he wouldn't have a choice in the future. As for Xiao Chen, he knew what Wu Gang was thinking. However, he didn't care. It would be best if Huanshan Pavilion was willing to help him. If they weren't willing to put in the effort, then he should be able to find Nie Xiaoyu after obtaining the treasure left by the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Right now, what Xiao Chen hoped the most was that Nie Xiaoyu would be able to turn misfortune into fortune. He hoped that nothing would happen to her before he found her. But on the other hand, Nie Xiaoyu was clearly a living dead person. Even if someone wanted to harm her, they wouldn't be able to kill her because he had never heard of a person dying twice. After Dou Ling sent the news back, Wu Gang brought Xiao Chen and the others to the Green Devil Valley. They went straight to the teleportation formation that Tang Tang and Yu Xiaochuan used. Along the way, Wu Gang repeatedly tried to get some information out of Xiao Chen. He especially wanted to know how this guy was still alive after entering the Jade Green Demonic Valley. Could it be that he had some special equipment? Or did he take some kind of medicinal pill in advance? But no matter how Wu Gang asked, Xiao Chen just evaded the topic and did not answer him at all, causing Wu Gang to feel very depressed but at a loss for what to do. It was already late at night when they arrived near the teleportation formation. Second Head and the others who were stationed in the forest far away were already asleep. They could hear their snores from afar. Second Head and the others obviously didn't believe that anyone would take the risk to enter the Green Devil Valley. Even if ordinary cultivators went in, they would still die. Therefore, they didn't even arrange for a night watch. They were all sleeping like dead pigs. Immortal Shao, look, that teleportation formation is the entrance to the Green Devil Valley. Wu Gang pointed at the formation and explained in a low voice, when you walk over there, you'll see that there are some small holes on the edge of the formation. You need to insert a spirit crystal into each hole in order to activate the formation. As long as you feel a silver-white light flashing around you after inserting the spirit crystal, it means that the activation is successful and you'll be teleported to the Green Devil Valley. Alright, I got it. Xiao Chen glanced at the teleportation formation and nodded. He turned around and pulled Hongzhu, who was following behind him. Holding her hand, he said, "You and Li Xiener should wait for me outside for a while. I'll finish gathering the purple mist lotus as soon as possible, then I'll come out to look for you. If you run into any danger outside, quickly find a safe place to escape to. Let those two guys from the Fantasy Dust Pavilion deal with them. You just need to ensure your own safety and wait for me in Clear Moon Town. Husband Xiao Chen, you must pay attention to your safety." Hongzhu bit her lower lip, sobbing as she said, "As long as I don't see you come out, then I won't leave this place. Even if I die, I will go in and die with you, so you must remember that we will be waiting for you here. You must come back soon." Chapter 1507. Actually, Hongzhu's inner feelings were very complicated and tangled. She did not want Xiao Chen to take the risk alone. The taste of waiting was just too unbearable. However, the situation this time was indeed rather special. Hongzhu really wanted to help, but she was completely helpless. She could only watch helplessly as Xiao Qin charged into the valley, alone. Xiao Qin, be careful. If you encounter any danger, don't fight it head-on. Li Xianer also warned him solemnly. Although Li Xianer had already learned some things about the Green Devil Valley on the way here, she also didn't know why Xiao Qin insisted on entering the valley. If Xiao Qin entered such a deadly place alone to ask the people of Huanshan Pavilion to help him find Ye Xiaoyu, then the price was too high. Okay, I will be careful. Xiao Qin smiled. After saying goodbye to the two women, he came in front of Wu Gang and warned him again, your cultivation should not be low, right? Remember to take good care of these two girls. Nothing can happen to them. If anything happens to them, I guarantee that you won't even get a single purple mist lotus. Do you understand? Of course, of course. Immortal Shao, you can rest assured. We will take care of everything. Wu Gang quickly patted his chest and said confidently. Ever since he knew that Xiao Qin had the strength of the mountain opening stage, Wu Gang had changed his view of him. His attitude was also much more sincere than before. After all, his strength was not as good as Xiao Qin's now. There was no benefit in being superior. Wu Gang had already secretly decided that as soon as Xiao Qin entered the Devil Valley, he would immediately find an excuse to leave. Then he would pass on the latest news to the sect leader and let him make more appropriate arrangements. Seeing that everything here was almost settled, Xiao Qin didn't delay any longer. His figure flashed and disappeared in front of everyone. The next moment, Xiao Qin appeared in the teleportation portal. After quickly inserting spiritual crystals into the small holes around him, a familiar silver-white light flashed, and his whole body was wrapped in it. With a whooshing sound, Xiao Qin's figure disappeared in an instant. The silver-white light gradually dissipated, and the transmission array returned to its original state. When the white light flashed before his eyes again, Xiao Qin sensed that his surroundings had changed. Opening his eyes slightly, Xiao Qin immediately confirmed that he was standing in the jade-green demonic valley. This was because the entire valley was surrounded by a dense green mist. It looked beautiful and strange. Xiao Qin looked around and found that this place was quite big. At a glance, other than the forest at the edge of the valley, the grassland in the middle could not be seen at all. When Xiao Qin turned around to look, there was a lush forest behind him. It looked deserted, and it was obvious that it was not the location of the exit. After getting a rough understanding of the surroundings, Xiao Qin asked in the Sea of Consciousness, Elder Heaven Ancestor, are you familiar with this place? Should we go find the purple mist nefarious lotus and help you rebuild your body? Or should we go to the place where you hide your things first? Alas, so disappointing. The guys in the world of immortal cultivation are really getting worse with each generation. Elder Heaven Ancestor sighed and said helplessly, I remember when the transmission array in the Jade-Green Magic Valley was first built, it could send everyone to the same place. I didn't expect that they can't even do such a simple principle now. They actually teleport randomly. They are really useless. According to what you said, it seems that we won't be able to find your treasure in a short time? Xiao Qin laughed and joked, then I'd better go and pick the purple mist nefarious lotus first. After I pick it, I'll make you a complete man again. Complete my ass. You think too simply. Do you think that you can rebuild your body after getting the purple mist nefarious lotus? Elder Heaven Ancestor scolded angrily, as the saying goes, too stupid and too naive. It refers to you. What do you mean? Didn't you say that once you have the purple mist nefarious lotus, you can make it into a necessary material to rebuild your body? Xiao Qin scratched his head in confusion and asked in a puzzled manner. That's right, but your current strength is too low. It's simply impossible. So, you should go and get the treasure first and improve your cultivation. Then we can think about the purple mist nefarious lotus. Elder Heaven Ancestor said unhurriedly. Alright, then I'll listen to you. Xiao Qin touched his nose awkwardly. Since Elder Heaven Ancestor was not in a hurry to return to his human form, then Xiao Qin was even less in a hurry. It was better to follow the steps one by one. Xiao Qin raised his head and looked at the green mist drifting everywhere in the sky. He asked doubtfully, Old Sky, is there really no danger in this dark green poisonous gas? It can't be that I'm fine when I breathe it in, but after a while there will be side effects, right? You don't have to worry about this. This green mist not only does not hinder your body, but it can also help you in your cultivation. Elder Heaven Ancestor smiled indifferently and said, If you don't believe me, you can try inhaling a few mouthfuls. Really? Xiao Qin half believed and half doubted as he inhaled a bit of the green mist. He found that the vitality in his meridians had become more vigorous. Moreover, there was a slight warmth coming from his dantian. He couldn't help but be surprised. Didn't Elder Nangong say that the Devil's Valley is full of poisonous gas and very dangerous? Why is it so beneficial to the body and mind? Of course it's poisonous gas. That guy didn't lie to you. Elder Heaven Ancestor said unhurriedly, it's just that because of your cultivation method, even if the poisonous gas circulates in your body, it can still be converted into your vitality. Moreover, this poisonous gas is very pure, so the quality is also very high. Taking a breath of it is equivalent to cultivating for several days. So powerful? Then I have to take a few more breaths. Xiao Chen was overjoyed when he heard that. He took a few deep breaths and immediately felt an endless stream of essence flowing out of his dantian. It made him feel energized. Even the spiritual sense that he released was much broader than before. How is it? I didn't lie to you, did I? But don't inhale too much at once. You should understand the principle of extreme things will go in the opposite direction. Elder Heaven Ancestor said with a smile. Xiao Chen nodded. In any case, this was poisonous gas. No matter how powerful his cultivation method was, if he inhaled too much, it would still be a big problem. With the help of Xiao Chen's divine sense, Elder Heaven Ancestor said to Xiao Chen, you go to the east first. I seem to have some impression of this big tree. It shouldn't be far from where I hit it. About 10 kilometers away. Chapter 1508. Hearing Elder Heaven Ancestor's words, Xiao Chen could not help but roll his eyes. A few dozen kilometers was considered not far? How far would that be considered far? However, Xiao Chen did not plan to bicker with Elder Heaven Ancestor. Instead, he followed his instructions and delved deeper into the dense fog, carefully heading towards the east. Outside the Green Devil Valley, Hongzhu and Li Xian'er were hiding side by side in a corner of a mountain. The two of them were guarding outside. On one hand, they were worried about Xiao Chen's safety, and on the other hand, they had to be wary of the two people from Huanshan Pavilion. Since Xiao Chen's words were still ringing in their ears, the two of them naturally did not completely trust Wu Gang and Dou Ling. Just as they were concentrating and maintaining their vigilance, they discovered that the bushes beside the teleportation formation suddenly moved. Then two figures emerged from the bushes and quickly ran towards the teleportation formation. Sister Hongzhu, quick look. Li Xian'er's eyes were sharp and she was the first to notice the abnormality. She quickly pulled on Hongzhu's clothes and pointed at the sneaky figures in the teleportation formation. She held her chin and said with a puzzled expression, those two people. Why do I feel that they look a little familiar? I feel like I've seen them somewhere before. I can't remember for a while. Wu Gang was discussing the next step of the plan with Dou Ling. When he sensed the movement, he looked up and saw the two people scratching their ears and cheeks in the teleportation formation. Then he heard Li Xian'er's whisper. Hongzhu also squinted his eyes and looked over. He could not help but exclaim softly, oh my god! That old man is Gong Sun Yen? The kid beside him should be the third-generation disciple of the Jia family. I think his name is Jia Tu or something. Why are they here? What are they doing standing in the teleportation formation? The two people standing in the teleportation formation were Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao. They were holding spirit crystals in their hands and seemed to be discussing something. Miss Hong, do you know those two people over there? Wu Gang hurriedly took a few steps forward and pointed at the two figures in the formation. He asked Hongzhu curiously. I know him, but I'm not too familiar with him. Hongzhu curled his lips and said somewhat disdainfully, we've only met a few times. It seems like they also want to enter the valley. Wu Gang rolled his eyes and asked sincerely, could it be that the two of them are like immortal Shao and have some special ability to resist the poisonous gas in the dark green demon valley? As for their abilities, Hongzhu opened his mouth, but he really didn't know how to explain it. If he said that he didn't know, the other party might think that he was deliberately hiding something and had to make up a story. He couldn't think of anything on the spot. While Hongzhu was still racking his brains, trying to come up with a solution, the teleporting formation not far away from them suddenly glowed with a silvery white light once again. Everyone turned around and found that Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao, who had been standing inside, had disappeared. Obviously, they had been teleported into the Green Devil Valley. Sigh. If you knew him, you should have said so earlier. Perhaps we can ask them for help and bring back some amethyst nefarious lotuses. Dou Ling sighed heavily and said with a regretful expression. Bring back something? Forget it, it's already good enough for them to come out alive. Hongzhu sneered and mocked mercilessly. Hongzhu never had a good impression of Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao. Moreover, he didn't believe that these two fellas were stronger than Xiao Chen. Therefore he hoped that they would be poisoned to death as soon as they entered the valley. It would be best if they didn't cause any trouble for Xiao Chen's husband. Dou Ling was slightly startled by Hong Zhu's words. He turned around and exchanged a glance with Wu Gang. He had a rough idea of what was going on. He guessed that the two sneaky fellas were only average in strength and would definitely die after entering the valley. Therefore he didn't say anything else. Wu Gang even found an excuse and slipped away to send a message to the sect. Elder Gongsun, I know that you've always been experienced and knowledgeable. I wonder if you know why the air in the Green Devil Valley is green? After smoothly entering the Green Devil Valley, Jia Tuyao curiously looked around. He was greatly interested in the dense green mist, and asked Ji Hao modestly. If I'm not wrong, this green mist should be able to assist in cultivation. Otherwise, why would Xiao Chen sneak in here? Gong Sun Yen analyzed seriously. If it wasn't for the fact that we've been living in the forest every day, we wouldn't have found this place by chance. Cough cough cough. As he spoke, Gong Sun Yen couldn't help but cough a few times. He felt that his throat was a little painful. Could it be that he had caught a cold? After Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao came to the cultivation world, because their cultivation levels were too low, they could only work as laborers in Dada Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce. However, every time they worked for less than a month they were fired by their employers. The reason was very simple. They were either sneaky or quarreling with their employers or customers. Later, they were even blacklisted by the Dada Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, which refused them to find jobs through the Chamber of Commerce. They had no choice but to wander around. Because they didn't have many spirit crystals left, they could only make do in the wild or empty houses at night. Fortunately, there were many wild beasts in the cultivation world so they could hunt them and roast them to eat. Otherwise, even food would be a problem. I know that brat Xiaochen very well. He has always been a person who won't get up early if there's nothing to gain. So, I reckon that there should be some extremely valuable treasure hidden in here, or perhaps it's a natural treasure that has been growing for a very long time. Jia Tuyao said confidently, if we can find the treasures before him, won't we be rich? We won't have to sleep in the open anymore. Achoo. As he spoke, Jia Tuyao felt a little itchy in his nose. He thought that a small bug had gotten into his nostril, so he didn't pay much attention to it and reached out to wipe it. What you said is very likely. I think we should act separately. In this way the probability of finding the treasures will be higher. Whoever finds it first will go to the big tree and wait for the others. What do you think? Gong Sun Yen made up his mind. Then he coughed a few times and turned to look at Jia Tuyao. Suddenly he was shocked by his appearance. Okay, we'll do as you said. I'll go west. 2 lines of blood were hanging under Jia Tuyao's nose. However, as soon as the blood flowed out, it instantly solidified in the air. The 2 red lines looked very scary. However, he didn't seem to notice it. He kept rubbing his nose with his hand and asked inexplicably, "Why do you keep staring at me? Is there something dirty on my face?" Chapter 1509. Well, Jia Tuyao, is it because you haven't touched a woman for a long time that you're so hot? Otherwise, why do you keep having a nosebleed? Gong Sun Yen stared at Jia Tuyao with a weird look on his face. He thought, what the F***ck? How could this kid still want to play with women at such a critical moment? What a reckless young man. What did you say? Jia Tuyao paused for a second, then lowered his head and found that his palms were already covered in blood. He gently touched his nose, only to find another puddle of blood. But soon the blood coagulated. Jia Tuyao scratched his head in confusion and said, I don't know. Maybe I'm too hot. How dare you say that to me? You've been coughing blood since just now. I'd like to ask you if you're sick. I'm coughing blood. How could it be? Cough cough cough. Hearing Jia Tuyao's words, Gong Sun Yen was startled. He wanted to say something but couldn't help but cover his mouth with his hand and cough a few times. When Gong Sun Yan's coughing slowed down a little, he subconsciously spread his palms and looked at them. His palms were all red, and even his clothes were stained with the blood that he coughed out. Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao glanced at each other, both having a bad feeling. Jia Tuyao pondered for a while, then abruptly slapped his forehead and said, Damn it, I got it. This green mist can't help with cultivation at all. I think it's poisonous gas. You old B****, how could you trick me? Let's find a way out or we'll die in here sooner or later. Scam your mother's leg. Gong Sun Yen retorted unhappily, I told you not to come in here, but you insisted that following Xiao Chen would bring you benefits. Now, even the last few crystals have been used to activate the teleporting formation. If we need to use crystals to get out, won't we be in big trouble? While scolding Jia Tuyao, Gong Sun Yin held his breath and ran back. However, after a few steps, he felt that his legs had softened and he fell to the ground. Obviously, it's you, old B*****, who coveted Xiao Chen's treasures, and I was tricked by you to come here, ouch. Jia Tuyao ran for a few steps before he was tripped by a tree root on the ground. He instantly lost his balance and fell flat on his face, lying on the ground while grimacing in pain. Gong Sun Yin couldn't be bothered with him. He wanted to stand up and continue running, but he couldn't muster any strength, so he could only inch back to where he came from. As Gong Sun Yin had inhaled too much poisonous gas when he came in, not only did he feel dizzy, but he was also coughing up more and more blood. Even his ears were oozing blood, but he didn't know it. Jia Tuyao's eyesight was blurred as well, and his pupils were already filled with blood streaks. However, driven by his strong desire to survive, he still insisted on crawling back the way he came from, hoping that he could luckily escape from this dreadful place. After a few breaths, Gong Sun Yin was lying on the ground with his face up to the sky, while Jia Tuyao was lying face down on the ground, motionless. Both of them stopped moving and breathing at the same time. On the grassland that was suffused with green mist, blood gushed out of their eyes, ears, nose and mouth, and they died suddenly. Why do I hear something? Behind the forest not far away from where Gong Sun Yin and Jia Tuyao had fallen, Tang Tang was walking forward with a broken piece of paper in her hand. On the piece of paper in her hand was a drawing of the purple mist lotus. In the past few days she had been exploring the west side of the Green Devil Valley, and had almost searched half of the Devil Valley. Earlier, Tang Tang had encountered some spirit beasts. Fortunately, they weren't aggressive, and only glanced at her curiously before leaving. Because of this, she was able to continue her search in the depths of the Devil Valley safely. Tang Tang was a little confused as she looked in the direction where the sound came from. As the forest was too dense, she couldn't see anything, so she shook her head and kept moving forward. After passing through the lush forest, her field of vision suddenly widened, and a terraced field appeared in front of Tang Tang. There were all kinds of natural treasures growing in the terraced field, among which many plants had purple flower buds, and 3 green round leaves were wrapped around their sturdy roots. They were standing upright in the grass, swaying left and right when the breeze blew, looking very eye-catching. That seems to be the purple mist lotus, right? Tang Tang's eyes lit up. She quickly ran over and murmured, "It seems that I'm quite lucky." Running to those plants, Tang Tang picked up the piece of paper and carefully compared the shape of the purple flower with the shape of the purple mist lotus in the paper. After repeatedly confirming that they were the same species, she took out a knife from her backpack and started cutting the roots of the purple mist lotus. Puff! Just as Tang Tang's sharp blade cut off a purple mist black lotus, a stream of purple gas suddenly gushed out of the thick rhizome and sprayed straight toward Tang Tang's face. The pungent smell almost suffocated her. Cough cough cough. What the hell is this? It can even spit poisonous gas. Tang Tang waved her hand angrily, dispersing the purple gas. She stared at the half-root of the purple mist lotus and said to herself, "Fortunately, my physique is special and I'm immune to all kinds of poisons. Otherwise, even if I'm not poisoned to death by the green mist, I would be killed by this stupid thing." Tang Tang just complained a few words, suddenly felt a little dizzy as if she was drunk. Immediately, her vision became a little blurred, and she couldn't see anything clearly. Shaking her head and taking a few deep breaths, Tang Tang originally wanted to sober up, but she felt dizzy. Before she figured out what had happened, her vision went black and she directly fell to the ground and passed out. On the other side of the valley, Xiao Qin, according to the direction pointed by the Elder Heaven Ancestor, passed through layers of poisonous green mist. After running for nearly 30 kilometers, he finally found a secret cave at the foot of a mountain. The cave was hidden very well. If it were not for the Elder Heaven Ancestor's determination to be in this place, Xiao Qin would not have been able to find the cave behind the bushes, grass, and vines. Although Xiao Qin did not encounter any danger along the way, he always had a faint feeling that he was being watched, and the closer he got to the cave, the stronger the feeling was. Xiao Qin had stopped many times to search for the source of this feeling of surveillance, but he could not find it. He could not help but feel puzzled. It's here. When Xiao Qin finally came to the entrance of the cave, the Elder Heaven Ancestor said slowly, "In the deepest part of this cave, there is the energy condensed by my lifelong cultivation. You can go in later and receive my inheritance." Chapter 15:10. Staring at the bottomless cave, Xiao Qin had mixed feelings. However, before he could speak, the Elder Heaven Ancestor asked, "By the way, do you remember that when I first became your master, I asked you to do something for me?" "Yes, of course I remember." Xiao Qin nodded and raised his eyebrows. "What is it? Can you tell me now?" "Actually, you already knew." The Elder Heaven Ancestor laughed and revealed the mystery. "After you have accepted the inheritance and your strength has increased, go pick the purple mist lotus and prepare the materials to rebuild my body." "So that's what you're talking about. Of course there's no problem with that. This is something a disciple should do." Xiao Qin came to a sudden realization and immediately nodded, agreeing to it. "Don't let your guard down. The rest of the materials and equipment are quite complicated." The Elder Heaven Ancestor was afraid that Xiao Qin would be too confident, so he reminded him, "You should take care of the inheritance first, then push forward." Xiao Qin was about to step into the cave when he suddenly thought of something. He stopped and asked worriedly, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, isn't this a little inappropriate? If I absorb all of your cultivation energy, then after you rebuild your body, your strength will definitely not be as good as before. Why don't I leave the cultivation energy for you?" Naturally, Xiao Qin was happy that his strength could be improved. However, when he thought of the Elder Heaven Ancestor losing most of his cultivation, he was a little worried. If the Elder Heaven Ancestor obtained the body and was only left with the cultivation of the Qi refining stage, then wouldn't he have to start from scratch again? "You don't have to worry about this. This cave only contains a part of my energy. The rest of my cultivation is stored in my primordial spirit." The Elder Heaven Ancestor paused and solemnly warned, "But don't be fooled by the amount of energy inside. For the current you, it will still be quite troublesome to absorb it. You may not be able to complete it smoothly, so you must be careful." Under the guidance of the Elder Heaven Ancestor, Xiao Qin took a deep breath and walked into the dark cave. Because Xiao Qin was completely following the route that the Elder Heaven Ancestor told him, even if he did not release his divine sense, it was very easy for him to walk. The only uncomfortable thing was that the feeling of being watched was getting stronger. Moreover, after searching repeatedly, he could not find the source, which made Xiao Qin a little annoyed. However, in his sea of consciousness, the Elder Heaven Ancestor did not give any warning. He was still pointing at the direction unhurriedly. Xiao Qin could only temporarily ignore this feeling and continue to go deeper into the cave. In the pitch-black and deep cave, the concept of time became blurry. Xiao Qin felt as if the path beneath his feet never had an end. Furthermore, he could not see any light in front of him. It was pitch black from beginning to end. If not for the Elder Heaven Ancestor's reminder from time to time, Xiao Qin would even think that he was walking towards the depths of the earth. As Xiao Qin went deeper and deeper into the cave, he finally felt a subtle change. That was, the Heaven's Stolen Fortune battle technique in his body suddenly began to circulate on its own. The Yuan Qi that was originally sleeping in his tendons and meridians also seemed to sense the abnormality and began to become abnormally active. It resonated with the Heaven's Stolen Fortune battle technique, and a blazing warm current gradually rose from his dantian. Feeling this wonderful change in his body, Xiao Qin could not help but quicken his pace. He stuck out his tongue and gently licked his lips. He asked in a low voice in his sea of consciousness, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, why is my mental cultivation method circulating on its own? Are you secretly controlling it, or are we almost at our destination?" "We're already there." The Elder Heaven Ancestor's calm voice came out and explained, "Because we practice the same mental cultivation method, when you get close to the cultivation energy I left behind, your mental cultivation method will automatically circulate, and the closer you are, the faster the mental cultivation method will circulate." "We're here?" Xiao Qin looked around and quickly walked forward for a while. He could not help but stop and murmured, "But why don't I find anything? Where's the treasure? Where's the cultivation energy? There's only one wall here." At this moment in Xiao Qin's surroundings, other than the ice-cold and hard stone walls and some weeds in the crevices, there was basically nothing else. The path in front of him had already been sealed off by the stone walls. It was obvious that he had already reached the end of the cave. Just as Xiao Qin was feeling lost, the Elder Heaven Ancestor's primordial spirit suddenly came out and pointed at the stone wall. "You can go through this stone wall in front of you and then continue forward. It won't be long before you see a stone door. That is the real entrance to the treasure." "Go through the stone wall?" Xiao Qin reached out his hand to touch it, and as expected, he did not feel anything. His hands directly passed through the stone wall. "Holy crap, Elder Heaven Ancestor, you're really amazing. So this stone wall is just a facade. I really couldn't tell," Xiao Qin exclaimed. The wall in front of him was able to avoid his divine sense. Whether it looked or perceived, it was just a stone wall. This illusion was too amazing. This is a camouflage I set up in the past, but with your current strength you can't see it clearly. The Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice was very calm, as if he was talking about something unimportant. Xiao Qin awkwardly touched his nose and walked forward. After passing through the stone wall, the space inside suddenly opened up. Not far in front of Xiao Qin there was a huge stone door. Xiao Qin took 2 steps forward, and inadvertently turned his head to see the Elder Heaven Ancestor's primordial spirit still floating in the air, closely following him. He could not help but ask in surprise, "Why are you still outside? Don't you want to come back? Aren't you afraid that your body and soul will be destroyed?" "Don't worry, you'll find out in a moment." The Elder Heaven Ancestor smiled mysteriously, not telling Xiao Qin the reason. Xiao Qin curled his lips, too lazy to ask any more questions. He quickly walked in front of the stone door and tried to push it, but the stone door did not move. "What's going on?" Xiao Qin scratched his head, and his gaze drifted to Elder Sky, who was floating at the side. "Could this be the reason why you're floating outside?" The Elder Heaven Ancestor's primordial spirit did not pay attention to Xiao Qin, but quickly floated to the side of the stone door, cleared his throat and silently chanted a few incantations. Then he shouted, "Open sesame." Boom. The sound of stones rubbing against each other suddenly rang out, giving Xiao Qin a fright. He saw that the stone door, which was originally tightly shut, had a crack in the middle. It split into 2 and slowly opened inwards, revealing an extremely simple secret room. Chapter 15:11. Holy *T Elder Heaven Ancestor, your secret code to open the door is too casual. Xiao Qin finally realized that the Elder Heaven Ancestor had shouted the secret code to open the door. He was speechless. However, Xiao Qin was also surprised from the bottom of his heart. One must know that even the most advanced technology in the secular world could not create a voice-activated door without the use of any electronic equipment. However, Elder Heaven Ancestor could actually successfully create such a delicate secret room thousands of years ago. According to the principle of Occam's razor, the simplest thing is the most effective. The US's nuclear weapon password used to be only 8 zeros. They also used it for more than 10 years and no one could crack it. Elder Heaven Ancestor was the first to float into the secret room. He could not help but feel a little emotional when he revisited the old place. His tone was not quite the same as usual. "Oh, how is this related?" Xiao Qin could not help but feel angry and funny at the same time. He shook his head and muttered to himself before stepping into the secret room. "Why not? The Great Tao is the simplest, returning to the original. These are all the principles in cultivation. Of course, it can be used everywhere," Elder Heaven Ancestor said without turning his head. Xiao Qin thought about it and could not help but ask, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, could it be that you designed all the mechanisms in this secret room? But there are neither scientific instruments nor electronic equipment in the cultivation world. How did you create that voice-activated door? What's there to be surprised about?" After the ancient cultivators understood the magnate realm and the great Tao of 3 elements unification, they could become existences that could not be killed by nuclear weapons. Elder Heaven Ancestor's tone was a little disappointed. When your cultivation has broken through to a higher level, you will naturally know that it is child's play to create this little thing with your divine sense and mental strength. Elder Heaven Ancestor, have you stayed in the secular world for too long? Have you read a lot of strange martial arts novels? Xiao Qin heard Elder Heaven Ancestor's explanation and could not help but laugh. How could there be people that could not be killed by nuclear weapons? This is too fantastical. No one will believe it even if I tell them. Cultivation is an extremely mysterious knowledge. I can't explain it to you in a short time. Elder Heaven Ancestor could not be bothered to argue with Xiao Qin anymore. He had already walked around the secret room and stopped at a corner. He pointed at a protruding place on the stone wall and said to Xiao Qin, "Come here and press this mechanism." "Oh, okay." When Xiao Qin saw that Elder Sky did not answer him, he could only shrug his shoulders in boredom. He acknowledged it and walked over to press the switch. Ta. As Xiao Qin pressed the protruding place, there was a slight sound of impact coming from the stone wall. Then, on the ground not far away, an ordinary-looking round stone began to sink slowly, revealing a bottomless cave. Xiao Qin was a little dumbfounded as he looked at this magical scene. As the grinding sound of gears continued to ring, a golden light gradually emerged from the pitch-black cave. Seeing a golden energy ball rising from the cave, Xiao Qin felt that the heaven's stolen fortune battle art in his body was circulating faster and faster. It even produced a force out of thin air, involuntarily pushing him in the direction of the energy ball. Elder Heaven Ancestor floated ahead of Xiao Qin and pointed at the golden energy ball. He looked at Xiao Qin and asked, "Xiao Qin, are you ready? Next, you will begin to accept my inheritance. Let me give you a heads up because this is also the most dangerous moment. If there is any rejection during the inheritance process, it is very likely that you will be blown into ashes by my energy." What? No way. Elder Heaven Ancestor, we both cultivate the heaven's stolen fortune battle art. Moreover, I feel that my current state is quite good. How can there be rejection? Xiao Qin was shocked and blurted out. A disciple who wanted to accept the master's inheritance would actually be in danger. Wasn't this too much of a scam? Why was it different from what he had imagined? Nonsense. Who asked you to be so stupid and insist on cultivating the mental cultivation method in reverse? Elder Heaven Ancestor said in a bad mood. I cultivated in the normal order. Who knows if there is any conflict between my energy and your Yuan Qi? What if? Elder Heaven Ancestor paused and didn't continue because he also didn't know if there would be any conflict between the Yuan Qi produced by the same heart technique but two different cultivation methods. Xiao Qin looked at Elder Heaven Ancestor's hesitant expression and began to retreat in his heart. A trace of rejection appeared in his mind. Oh, how about I don't accept the inheritance? If I am accidentally killed, then wouldn't I be like you, a primordial spirit without a body? Xiao Qin said with some uneasiness. At that time, even the fire of the underworld and little demon and will be homeless. At this time in this desolate place, where can we find a host to take over? Take over my ass. Do you think that if you are killed, the few of us primordial spirits in your body will still be alive? Elder Heaven Ancestor rolled his eyes. He was very helpless against Xiao Qian's strange thinking. However, after saying this, Elder Heaven Ancestor was silent for a while. Perhaps he felt that his tone was a little harsh, so he softened his tone and said lightly, "How about this? I will give you some time. Think about whether you are willing to accept the inheritance or not." Xiao Qin silently looked at the golden energy ball that was emitting a warm luster. In fact, he was not afraid of death. The problem was, after he died, what would happen to the eldest young Miss Hongzhu and the others? In addition to them, there were Li Xiener, Nie Xiaoyu, and even Yu Buchuan. Except for Nie Xiaoyu, who was still missing, the others should still be suffering in the cultivation world. Apart from him, who else could help them get out of danger? But then again, if they were really captured by a stronger force, then Xiao Qin felt that with his current strength of the mountain opening stage, he might not be able to rescue them. If he accepted the inheritance and succeeded, he might be able to improve his strength by several levels. In the future, it would be more convenient for him to move around, and he could avoid the situation where he could not save people and needed others to save them instead. Xiao Qin was in a dilemma for a while. Suddenly he felt a chill in his heart. Since when had he become so indecisive? Wasn't it just a mere inheritance? What happened to the courage he had when facing the unknown? Could it be that he was stumped by this unknown danger? Xiao Qin, have you made up your mind? Elder Heaven Ancestor walked around the golden energy ball. The aura emitted by his primordial spirit fluctuated constantly. Obviously, he was a little impatient and could not help but urge. After the cultivation energy leaves the underground mechanism, it can't be preserved for long. If you want to become stronger, hurry up and accept the inheritance or I will put this thing back. Chapter 15:12. Hearing the Elder Heaven Ancestor's urging, Xiao Qin took a deep breath and his eyes suddenly lit up. Clenching his fists, he walked over and sat down cross-legged with his back facing the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Elder Heaven Ancestor, I'm ready. I can begin the inheritance at any time. Not bad, that's more like my disciple. The Elder Heaven Ancestor praised and then joked, relax a little. At worst, you'll be blown to ashes. There's nothing to be afraid of. Look at me, haven't I been through it? Xiao Qin shook his head with a wry smile. The Elder Heaven Ancestor might as well not have said those words. But thanks to his teasing, his originally nervous mood also relaxed. After adjusting the atmosphere, the Elder Heaven Ancestor put away the smile on his face and then silently chanted a few incantations. His primordial spirit directly entered the golden energy ball and fused with it. It gradually rose to the top of Xiao Qian's head and entered his Baihui acupoint inch by inch. Hu, feeling a majestic and pure energy enter his body from the top of his head, Xiao Qin immediately felt his body heat up. He let out a heavy breath and hurriedly urged the Yuan Qi in his dantian to meet it, intending to use his own yuan qi to refine the suffocating energy. Xiao Chen, don't be in a hurry to mobilize your yuan qi. Just as Xiao Chen began to move, the Elder Heaven Ancestor immediately reminded him, try to guide this energy first. Let it flow through your meridians for a while. Wait for it to slowly adapt to your body, then use the heaven-stealing fortune battle art to fuse with it. This will be smoother. Xiao Chen nodded in understanding and slowed down the speed at which his primordial spirit was moving. He carefully approached the energy. After carefully examining it for a while, Xiao Chen found that this cultivation energy was divided into two layers. The inner layer was a pure white energy ball, and the white ball was wrapped in a layer of golden light. It looked like a defense system. At this time, the layer of golden light was tightly wrapped around the white ball and constantly emitted an offensive aura. Cultivators and immortal cultivators, other than the fact that their mental cultivation methods are as different as day and night, the yuan qi that they condense is completely different as well. Just as Xiao Chen was curiously studying it, Elder Sky calmly explained from the side, within the yuan qi that we cultivators condense, there is a special kind of spirituality that can change according to the owner's personality. What does that mean? Does it mean that yuan qi is alive? Xiao Chen asked while observing the energy ball. More or less. The Elder Heaven Ancestor did not deny it. Instead, he explained from another angle, if the owner is born kind, then his yuan qi will be very approachable. On the other hand, it will be extremely violent and can easily cause backlash and harm to the owner. After you absorbed the energy of others, you mixed it with violent factors. Fortunately, you later resolved them. As the white energy ball circulated a small cycle in his body, and after listening to the Elder Heaven Ancestor's explanation, Xiao Chen's understanding of the energy ball deepened a lot. Since the Elder Heaven Ancestor was his master, the yuan qi he condensed would naturally not cause him any harm. Although the golden protective layer outside the energy ball looked a little scary, its existence was only a kind of protection. After understanding this, in order to show that he was not hostile, Xiao Chen's primordial spirit began to take the initiative to express its goodwill to the white energy ball. He also deliberately withdrew all the yuan qi stored in his meridians, so that it could freely flow through his body without any restrictions. The white energy ball seemed to feel Xiao Chen's friendliness. The layer of golden light outside it slightly dimmed, and it was not as aggressive as when it first entered Xiao Chen's body. Occasionally, it would emit a trace of aura to drive away the yuan qi that had not yet been withdrawn from his meridians. After about half an hour, the golden layer of the white energy ball finally disappeared completely. This meant that the Elder Heaven Ancestor's cultivation energy had 100% approval of Xiao Chen, and it was ready to merge with Xiao Chen at any time. Before Xiao Chen could say anything, the Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice suddenly sounded in his sea of consciousness. Alright, it's done. There's no need to flatter this guy anymore. Hurry up and absorb it. When Xiao Chen heard this, he immediately regained control of his primordial spirit and took over his body. He began to use the decisive destiny heaven seizing with all his strength. The next moment, the yuan qi in his body once again gathered from all directions, instantly tightly surrounding the white energy ball. Because the golden light outside the white energy ball had completely disappeared, there was no rejection between it and Xiao Chen's yuan qi. As soon as the two sides touched, they began to slowly merge. As time passed, when Xiao Chen's yuan qi and the white energy ball had completely merged, a new kind of energy appeared in his body. This energy was like a newborn born from the combination of the two. It quickly took root in his dantian and grew at an incredible speed. But, Elder Heaven Ancestor, why do I feel that this newborn energy is a little strange? Xiao Chen frowned, vaguely feeling that something was wrong. I can't tell what the specific problem is right now. Anyway, it's not normal. Do you know what's going on? In Xiao Chen's perception, when that newborn grew to a certain stage, it seemed to have its own personality. The originally vigorous and lively growth gradually became a little abnormal. It seemed to have the intention of abandoning the light and going to the dark, revealing mischievous and unhappy emotions. Oh, it's nothing. It's just a new power that is produced from the combination of two different types of vitality. Normally, it wouldn't develop a good impression of its master, which is you. Elder Sky didn't seem to care much and casually explained. This is clearly produced in my body. How can it not have a good impression of me? Isn't this nonsense? Xiao Chen was a little stunned. What was going on? It was clearly just yuan qi, so why was it having a little mood? It's normal. During this period, it's like a child's rebellious youth. As long as you can endure the pain and continue to instill it with kind thoughts, it will not take long for it to adapt. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said leisurely. Elder Heaven Ancestor, stop fooling around. There's actually a rebellious period. Ah. Xiao Chen had just laughed bitterly, but before he could finish speaking, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his dantian. Then it suddenly swelled up. It was obvious that the newborn energy was not very satisfied with Xiao Chen's dantian. At this time, it was wantonly causing trouble inside like a child rolling around in his own home. Chapter 15:13. Xiao Chen wanted to use his original Yuan Qi to suppress this new energy, but as soon as he tried, he found that the Yuan Qi in his body seemed to have been sucked out. Not a single trace was left. Just as Xiao Chen was about to cry, the Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice came again. What are you thinking? Your Yuan Qi has already completely fused with my energy. Don't try to use your Yuan Qi to suppress it. Otherwise, it will only have the opposite effect. Then what should I do? Xiao Chen watched as the energy wreaked havoc in his dantian. He asked bitterly, don't tell me I have to watch as it destroys my dantian? What are you panicking for? Elder Sky was very calm as he said, you don't have to resist it. You just need to circulate your mental cultivation method. Xiao Chen could only endure the pain in his dantian, clenched his teeth, and continued to practice the destiny-seizing heaven. At first, everything Xiao Chen did didn't seem to have any F***king effect. However, after he finished circulating the mental cultivation method, the new energy seemed to recognize this mental cultivation method. It suddenly ran out from his dantian and charged into his meridians. Xiao Chen almost cursed out loud. Although the pressure on his dantian had been relieved, his meridians had been severely damaged. It did not seem to be getting better. However, cursing was just cursing. Xiao Chen had no other choice. He could only continue to circulate the fortune-seizing heaven's will. As the circulation of the mental cultivation method became smoother and smoother, the speed at which the new energy collided also became faster and faster. Gradually, all the meridians in Xiao Chen's body expanded by several times. Even his dantian was greatly expanded, from a small pond to a large lake. But this swelling feeling was not good. From Xiao Chen's experience, it felt like his 5 viscera and 6 bowels were constantly expanding, and almost reaching the critical point. Boom. Finally, the newborn energy seemed to have run out of energy and suddenly exploded, splitting into countless tiny white light beams that shot out through Xiao Chen's pores and back and forth in the secret room. 2 or 3 of the light beams even shot out of the secret door and disappeared without a trace. Holy shit. What is this white light? It can actually injure a high-grade spiritual beast like me. This is unbelievable. As soon as the white light disappeared, a strange scream suddenly resounded in the cave. Then a snow-white giant beast rushed in, its nostrils constantly spewing out thick fog. At this moment, Xiao Chen had been knocked unconscious by the energy of the explosion. The secret room was filled with white beams of light that were shuttling back and forth. The spirit beast had been injured by the white light earlier, so it only dared to stand at the door of the secret room and keep a safe distance from the white light. It then stared at the situation in the secret room with its bell-like eyes. Haha, Xiao Chen. It really is you, kid. I was wondering why there would be a familiar scent in this place. I didn't think that this day would come for you. I didn't follow you in vain. When it saw the unconscious Xiao Chen lying on the ground, Bai Zhe threw its head back and laughed. It then proudly declared, just you wait. Once this strange white light disappears, I will definitely tear you into 1,000 pieces. After deciding on its target, Bai Zhe's eyes stared unblinkingly at Xiao Chen. It kept thinking about how it could kill him. Due to the fact that the Bai's spiritual beast had forced its way into the teleportation gate of the cultivation world at the very last moment, the teleportation process was a mess. The bag containing the natural treasures was also thrown to Xiao Chen and Hongzhu during the teleportation. The Bai Zhe spirit beast was supposed to be teleported to a desolate place like everyone else, but it was accidentally teleported into the Green Demonic Valley. With the help of the heavenly materials and earthly treasures and the green mist in the valley, its strength increased by several levels, and it became a high-level immortal cultivation spirit beast. However, Bai Zhe did not know the difference between cultivators and cultivators. Even though it had become powerful, it did not know what its current level was. It also did not understand why it was not poisoned to death by the green mist. Instead, it had made a breakthrough. It only vaguely knew that it was much more powerful than before, so it was very proud of itself. The white figures that Nie Xiaoyu had seen in the Green Demonic Valley were the afterimages left behind by Bai Zhe as it quickly shuttled through the forest. When it was at the open heavenly gate, it happened to see Nie Xiaoyu and Xiao Chen chatting. It thought that the two of them had a good relationship. When it found out that this girl had entered the Green Demonic Valley, it wanted to play a trick on her. It did not expect Nie Xiaoyu to be so easily frightened and faint with a bang. After Nie Xiaoyu fainted, Bai Zhe circled around her a few times. Suddenly an idea popped into its mind. Since Nie Xiaoyu was in trouble here, Xiao Qin, who had a good relationship with her, should come and save her. In that case, as long as he stood guard near this girl, wouldn't he be able to wait for Xiao Qin and teach that brat a lesson? Bai Zhe was very pleased with its idea. From then on, it no longer wandered around. Instead, it stood guard around Nie Xiaoyu. In its eyes, it had become more powerful. It would definitely be able to give Xiao Qin a good beating. After waiting for about half a month, the Bai Zhe spiritual beast finally found Xiao Qin. When Xiao Qin was teleported into the Jade Green Demonic Valley, the Bai Zhe spiritual beast immediately sensed it with its divine sense. It immediately circled left and right to find Xiao Qin, then quietly followed behind him. However, when Bai Zhe followed Xiao Qin deep into the cave, it found that he had actually walked through the stone wall. Bai Zhe felt that there might be a trap, so it waited outside for a while. In the end, it did not expect to be hit by the white light. It could not help but rush in. Looking at the white light shuttling back and forth in the secret room without blinking, Bai Zhe could not help but mutter, "What the hell are these white light pillars? It hurts when they hit me, and why haven't they disappeared? Don't tell me they keep bouncing around like this?" Looking at the unconscious Xiao Qin lying on the ground, Bai Zhe wished it could rush into the secret room and stomp on him a few times. However, it was very dangerous inside. If it was not careful, it might just die inside. Just as Bai Zhe was feeling depressed, the white light pillars finally began to slow down and gradually gathered above Xiao Qin. Under the Bai's spiritual beast's watchful gaze, the countless white lights condensed into a dazzling energy ball. First, it released a powerful shockwave in all directions, then it slowly entered Xiao Qin's body, causing his dantian to shine brightly. Chapter 15-14. Ah! Xiao Qin fiercely opened his eyes. Two rays of light shot out from his pupils. The vigorous energy in his dantian flowed along his meridians and spread throughout his entire body. Among them, there was an extremely violent energy that rushed up Xiao Qin's throat. It was as if a bomb had exploded out of his mouth. F***CK. What is this? Oh! Bai Zhe was originally full of joy and thought that it could enter the secret room. Just as it was about to rush in, it was hit by the energy that shot out from Xiao Qin's mouth. It couldn't help but let out a howl. The strong impact caused Bai Zhe to involuntarily fly backward, smashing a huge hole in the stone wall behind it. Most of its huge body was buried in the dust and gravel. It only felt its vision go black and it directly fainted. After an unknown amount of time, Bai Zhe gradually regained consciousness. Just as it moved, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in its ear, "So it's you. I didn't think that even you would enter the cultivation world. However, I'm a little curious, why weren't you poisoned to death by the green mist in the Jade Green Demonic Valley?" Bai Zhe shook its body with difficulty and opened its eyes to see Xiao Qin standing in front of it with his hands behind his back. There was a provocative smile on Bai Zhe's face as he stared at it with disdain. "You are still alive," Bai Zhe blurted out in shock. There was a strange feeling in its heart. Bai Zhe could clearly sense that at this moment, Xiao Qin's body was emitting a strange wave of vitality. It felt warm, but it could also faintly sense an indescribable power from this vitality. However, it couldn't tell what it was at the moment. "Nonsense, aren't you still alive?" Looking down at Bai Zhe's head from above, Xiao Qin said coldly, "When I was cultivating earlier, you seemed to want to harm me, right? You even said that you wanted to tear me into pieces, but aren't you lying on the ground like a dead dog now? You're too useless, I can't help but despise you." Although Xiao Qin had fainted on the ground, his consciousness was still very clear. When he saw the Bai's spiritual beast appear in his sea of consciousness, he was surprised as to why it was here. In fact, he was a little anxious. This was because Yangming's body was actually quite fragile when he was unconscious. If the countless white lights in the secret room had not been shuttling back and forth, which stopped the Bai's spirit beast from charging in, his body would have been damaged by the Bai's spirit beast for quite a while. "Xiao Qin, do you think my strength is still at the venerable realm?" The Bai's spirit beast scoffed angrily, then it snorted and roared, "Let me tell you, I've already become a higher-level spirit beast. Today, I will make you pay for all the humiliation I've suffered in the past." Once it finished speaking, the Bai's spirit beast rolled on the ground and shook off the gravel on its body. It then let out a roar and released an earth-shattering primordial chi, instantly revealing its inner strength. Oh, it's really powerful. Xiaochen pretended to be surprised and clapped his hands. He said indifferently, I'll give you 9 points for the way you roll on the ground like a dead dog. I won't give you the remaining point, lest you become arrogant. Looking at the behemoth at the peak of the mountain opening stage in front of him, Xiaochen had to admit that he was actually quite surprised. If he had not accepted the inheritance of the Celestial Elder and his strength had improved by leaps and bounds compared to before, reaching an extremely high realm, he was afraid that he would not be able to do anything to the base spiritual beast. Why This high-level spirit beast is going to die from anger, go and die. Hearing Xiaochen's mockery, the base spirit beast suddenly exploded. The tough white fur on its body stood straight up like a hedgehog in a defensive state. Its nostrils were panting heavily as it raised its front hooves and slammed them on the ground, crazily charging at Xiaochen. Xiaochen still stood there indifferently and slowly raised his right palm. When the base spirit beast was about to touch his chest, his right hand in the air slowly descended. His 5 fingers seemed to be weak and pa-ta, but they pressed on the base spirit beast's head. Bang! A muffled sound of a slap on the face rang out in the dark cave. The base spirit beast's face was hit by Xiaochen and it spun a few times like a top before it staggered and fell to the ground. AI, it's not that I want to criticize you, but aren't you a little too weak? Xiaochen leisurely sighed and said with a face full of disdain, didn't you just say that you've become a high-level spirit beast? Why can't you even withstand a casual slap from me? The base spirit beast, which had fallen to the ground, felt like it was seeing stars. When it heard Xiaochen's words, it wanted to say something, but it ended up vomiting all over the ground with a wah. It looked at Xiaochen with extreme fear in its eyes. TSK, look at you. You're vomiting all over the ground. Looks like you've eaten quite a lot of heavenly and earthly treasures. The food in the Green Demonic Valley is quite good. Xiaochen shook his head and commented casually when he saw Bai Zai's dumbfounded look. Blurg. The base spirit beast almost vomited out its gallbladder, but the destruction on its body was no longer a big deal. There was a strong sense of disbelief in its heart, as if everything that had just happened was an illusion. One slap. It was just a casual slap. Xiaochen actually beat me up like this? How is this possible? The corner of the base spirit beast's mouth twitched for a long time, and it finally forced itself to stand up. It took a few steps back to a corner before it asked carefully, what exactly is your strength? Could it be that the white light beam from before not only didn't kill you, but it helped you break through instead? What strength? Let me think. I'm now. Just as Xiaochen was about to report his strength, he was immediately speechless. After absorbing the Elder Heaven Ancestor's energy, he did indeed break through, and he felt like he had made a huge leap, but he really did not know what his current level was called. Elder Heaven Ancestor, my current strength seems to be higher than the mountain opening stage, right? Xiaochen directly asked in his sea of consciousness, is there a saying for this stage? Is it the earth opening stage that you mentioned last time? It's not the earth opening stage. The Elder Heaven Ancestor chose to deny it first. Just as Xiaochen was stunned, he faintly added, you're now at the peak of the sea-splitting stage. The next stage after the mountain opening stage is the earth opening stage, then the sea-splitting stage. Chapter 15:15. Holius H*T. I actually broke through 2 stages in a row. Xiaochen exclaimed in surprise, I didn't expect my master to be so awesome in the past. Just a little bit of cultivation energy was enough for me to soar to the sky. Xiaochen could feel that his strength had increased somewhat. However, he had never expected such a huge leap in strength. What's so great about that? You lost some energy in the process of inheriting, and it hit that spirit beast. Elder Heaven Ancestor was very calm. He was not complacent. Instead, he said lightly, back then my strength was much more awesome than the sea-splitting stage. However, your current strength is almost enough. I don't think there is anyone in the immortal cultivation world who can be your opponent. Elder Heaven Ancestor was most glad that there was no rejection during the inheritance. Although it made Xiaochen suffer a little, it was still successful in the end. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of effort. Xiaochen smacked his lips. For the first time, he had a clear understanding of Elder Heaven Ancestor's strength. Seeing that Bai Zai was still staring at him, Xiaochen simply operated his mental cultivation method and displayed the strength of the sea-splitting stage. Then he said expressionlessly, I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. You might as well open your eyes and see for yourself. Bai Zhe blinked its eyes. It could clearly feel an indescribable fear coming from Xiao Chen's body. It seemed that as long as Xiao Chen moved a finger, he could turn it into ashes at any time. Although I can't see it, you are indeed much stronger than before. The Bai Zhe spiritual beast could not help but admit that from the pressure that Xiao Chen was releasing, it could clearly sense the difference between the two of them. However, it did not understand the classification of levels in the cultivation world, so it could not tell what level Xiao Chen was at. Forget it, you don't need to know these things. Anyway, you just need to know that I'm much stronger than you. Xiao Chen shrugged and turned around to walk around the secret room. He realized that apart from a few boxes of spirit crystals, there was nothing else useful in the entire secret room. However, spirit crystals were no longer of any use to Xiao Chen. This was because his disciples were all very wealthy. They could casually take out a lot of spirit crystals. Hey, then you're not going to kill me? The Bai's spirit beast widened its eyes and looked at Xiao Chen, who was ignoring it and pacing around in the secret room in confusion. It asked in a probing manner. Why would I kill you? What's in it for me to kill you? Xiao Chen rolled its eyes at Bai Zhe and responded snappily, I still need you to help me find something. Looking for something? What are you looking for? Bai Zhe was confused again. Why didn't Xiao Chen follow the routine? She had failed to kill him, so shouldn't he take revenge? Do you know where the amethyst nefarious lotus is? Xiao Chen stared at Bai Zhe and asked, You just need to take me to find it, then you can do whatever you want. I won't do anything to you anymore. In Xiao Chen's opinion, Bai Zhe had lived here for a few months, so it should know the situation in the Green Devil Valley better. Maybe it knew the whereabouts of the amethyst nefarious lotus. What's amethyst? Bai Zhe asked in surprise. What does it look like? What do you want to do? I've never heard of it. After saying that, Bai Zhe shook its head inexplicably. It wondered if Xiao Chen was stupid. I don't even know the levels in the cultivation world, so how would I know where the amethyst nefarious lotus is? Only then did Xiao Chen realize that this divine beast had been staying in the Jade Green Demonic Valley all along. It probably had never heard of the amethyst lotus before. He decided to change his way of describing it. The amethyst lotus is a kind of natural treasure. Its appearance is also relatively easy to recognize. There's a purple flower bud at the top and a very thick root. There are even 3 round leaves wrapped around the stem. Have you seen it before? Xiao Chen had heard this description from the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Originally, he thought it would take him a while to find it, but now that he had caught Bai Zhe, it should be much more convenient. If that's the case, I seem to have seen it before. Bai Zhe mumbled for a while, then it suddenly had an idea. It cleared its throat and said, But, what's in it for me to help you find a heavenly treasure? Besides, you haven't told me what the amethyst nefarious lotus is used for. Bai Zhe the spiritual beast pondered. Since Xiao Chen had to find the amethyst black lotus no matter what, it meant that this thing must have an important use. Now that I know where this thing is, I might as well use this information to exchange for something valuable. Hehe, this high-level divine beast is really too smart. Why are you asking so many questions? Xiao Chen rolled his eyes and sneered, You actually have the guts to bargain with this young master? I'm already doing you a favor by not killing you. Why don't I kill you right now and take your skin, flesh, bones, blood, and even your inner core? Alright, and your beast penis. I'll sell them all for money. How about that? Maybe I can even make a fortune, which is much more valuable than the amethyst nefarious lotus. The spirit beast could not help but clamp its legs together as it felt a chill coming from its lower body. When it saw the faint smile on Xiao Chen's face, it was suddenly reminded of something, so it quickly smiled embarrassedly. How about this? I'll tell you a secret as well in exchange for the purple mist black lotus's function. What secret could you possibly have? Xiao Chen looked at Bai Zhe's strange expression in confusion. His intuition told him that it didn't seem like it was lying. Could it be that this fella found a top-grade magic tool or a secret martial skill or something like that in the Devil's Valley? Hehe, of course there is. A few days ago I was not far from this cave. I was scared. Cough, cough, cough. Bai Zhe suddenly coughed a few times and continued, I found a little girl friend of yours fainted on the ground. She seems to be alive, but her breath is very weak. I can take you to her, but you have to tell me what the amethyst nefarious lotus is. Bai Zhe stole a glance at Xiao Chen and realized that he didn't notice its strange behavior. Bai Zhe couldn't help but secretly wipe its cold sweat. I almost let the cat out of the bag. If Xiao Chen finds out that I scared the little girl until she fainted, he'll probably kill me on the spot. What did you say? Isn't it eldest young lady? Why is she here? Hearing Bai Zai's words, Xiao Chen's expression immediately changed. The first person that came to his mind was Cheng Menjing, but why was Menjing in the Green Devil's Valley? This place is filled with poisonous gas and she's not strong enough. Could she have fainted from the poison? Chapter 15-16. Who's the young lady? Baze wanted to ask a few more questions, but it suddenly felt a weight on its back. Then Xiao Chen urged it eagerly, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? Stop dilly-dallying and quickly bring me over. Hurry up." F***ck me, I already said that I'm a high-rank spirit beast, not your mount. The Bai Zai spirit beast was very displeased. It snorted a few times and protested angrily. However, before it could finish speaking, Xiao Chen kicked its stomach hard. "Cut the crap. Hurry up and lead the way." Xiao Chen shouted anxiously. With his current strength, he would definitely be faster than the Bai's beast even if he were to walk. However, he did not know where the young mistress had fainted. He still needed the Bai's beast to lead the way. Hiss! After being kicked, the Bai Zai spiritual beast grimaced in pain. However, it was powerless to resist, so it could only sullenly take a step forward. Currently, Xiao Chen's strength was much higher than its own. Resisting him would definitely not end well, so it could only bring this fellow over first. After leaving the cave with Xiao Chen on its back, Bai sped up its pace toward the direction of the forest, but it was thinking about its own thing. Since Xiao Chen was so secretive and refused to tell them the use of the amethyst black lotus, it seemed like this thing was definitely a good treasure. It might be able to assist in cultivation. Bai Zai secretly made up its mind. When Xiao Chen got the item, it would think of a way to steal it and eat it. Perhaps its level would surpass Xiao Chen's, and it would not be too late to get rid of him then. For now, it would endure the humiliation for the time being. While Xiao Chen was on his way to rescue Nie Xiaoyu, Tang Tang also woke up from her coma. She stood up with difficulty and moved her limbs. She first checked her body with primordial qi, but found no signs of being poisoned at all. Although she was very puzzled, she couldn't find the reason for it at the moment. She hesitated for a moment, but still picked up the amethyst nefarious lotus that had fallen on the ground before, and was ready to continue to collect the rest. However, Tang Tang was much more careful when collecting. She deliberately avoided the poisonous gas of the amethyst nefarious lotus to avoid fainting again. After collecting a few amethyst nefarious lotus, Tang Tang occasionally inhaled a little purple mist, but she didn't faint. Gradually she began to realize what the problem was. The amethyst nefarious lotus had grown in the valley for a long time, and it had produced a characteristic that resonated with the green poisonous gas in the valley. The amethyst nefarious lotus had its own purple mist. If someone cut off the flower bud, it would spurt out, making people dizzy. Coupled with the green gas in the air, people would faint or even die on the spot. Fortunately, Tang Tang's body was immune to all kinds of poisons. After inhaling a large amount of purple mist, she only fainted for a while. Now she paid more attention. If she accidentally inhaled a trace of two kinds of mist at the same time, she would sit down and rest for a while, running the 5 Poisons secret book. After all the toxins were discharged from her body, she would continue to collect the purple mist black lotus. Tang Tang's method was more time-consuming, but it was better than fainting again. After collecting all the amethyst nefarious lotus in the terraced field, Tang Tang wiped the sweat on her forehead and left in the direction she came from. According to the instructions of the second leader, no matter where she was in the Emerald Valley, as long as she walked in any direction to the end of the grassland and found an exit hidden under the waterfall along the foot of the mountain, she could return to the world of cultivation smoothly. Therefore Tang Tang was not in a hurry. She took the amethyst nefarious lotus and walked to the foot of the mountain unhurriedly. "Hey, you've been running for so long. Why haven't you arrived yet?" Xiao Chen was led by Baize for a long time, but he still didn't see Cheng Menjing. He couldn't help but ask, "Are you deliberately leading me in circles?" Xiao Chen could not help but have his suspicions because the surrounding terrain was almost the same. He anxiously knocked the Baize spirit beast's stomach with his heel again. "Hey, I'm here, just ahead." After suffering another kick, Bai Zai couldn't help but cry out in pain. It quickly sped up and rushed into a dense forest. Not far away, Nie Xiaoyu was lying on the ground with a pale face with her eyes closed. "Nie Xiaoyu. It's her." Xiao Chen saw the unconscious Nie Xiaoyu at a glance. He immediately jumped down from Baize's back, ran to her and let her lean on his arms. Staring at Nie Xiaoyu, who he hadn't seen for a long time, Xiao Chen had mixed feelings in his heart. A faint sense of loss arose spontaneously. Although it was good to find Nie Xiaoyu, It would be even more perfect if this person was Cheng Menjing. After collecting his thoughts, Xiao Qin first checked Nie Xiaoyu's physical condition and found that she was actually a master of the nascent soul stage. However, the vitality in Nie Xiaoyu's body was very chaotic at this time, and there was a very unusual black liquid in her dantian. It was bubbling and looked very active. According to Xiao Chen's judgment, Nie Xiaoyu's vitality was affected by this black liquid, causing the trajectory to be very abnormal, causing her to fall into a state of qi deviation and fall into a coma. Fortunately, Nie Xiaoyu was a yin cultivator. Her body was equivalent to a living dead person, and her internal organs had long lost all vitality. Otherwise, even if she was saved, she would become a useless person in the future. This black liquid looks familiar, I seem to have seen it somewhere. Just as Xiao Chen was carefully diagnosing, and Xiaoma suddenly muttered softly in his sea of consciousness. You know? Then tell me quickly, what is this thing and how should I deal with it? Just as Xiao Chen was about to use his vitality to disperse the black liquid, he immediately stopped when he heard in Xiaoma's words. He wanted to consult first so that he wouldn't cause any adverse effects to Nie Xiaoyu if he acted rashly. And Xiaoma recalled for a while and said awkwardly, Master, I'm really sorry. It's been too long and I can't remember the specific name of this thing. However, what I can be sure of is that as long as you use your vitality to force this black liquid out of her body, and then guide her vitality back to normal, there should be no problem. Got it, let's do that. Xiao Chen didn't say much and just nodded slightly. Then he followed the method and Xiaoma said and gradually injected vitality into Nie Xiaoyu's dantian to disperse the black liquid. Chapter 15-17. Perhaps it was because Xiao Chen's vitality was more oppressive. The originally active black liquid immediately quieted down after touching Xiao Chen's vitality. It was forced out of her dantian obediently and flowed into her meridians. Not long after, the black liquid was squeezed out of Nie Xiaoyu's pores. Xiao Chen did not stop when he saw this. Instead, he continued to guide the chaotic vitality back to the right track. After sorting out the chaotic situation in her body, Xiao Chen used his own vitality to nourish Nie Xiaoyu's internal organs and waited quietly for her to wake up. It's really strange. If I remember correctly, this potion should be quite stable. And Xiaoma saw Nie Xiaoyu's unconscious appearance through Xiao Chen's divine sense and couldn't help but murmur in surprise. Unless the brain is strongly stimulated or seriously injured during the duel, it's impossible for a person to go berserk. Besides, this little girl doesn't show any signs of injury. Hearing in Xiaoma's words, Xiao Chen didn't care too much for a while. Instead, he continued to silently channel vitality into Nie Xiaoyu's body. Right now, he could only wake her up before asking about the specific situation. Ugh. After a period of treatment by Xiao Chen, Nie Xiaoyu finally groaned softly. Nie Xiaoyu's slender eyelashes fluttered gently, and her lifeless eyes slowly opened. After looking around blankly, her gaze fell on Xiao Chen and gradually focused. Then her body suddenly trembled and she blurted out, Xiao Chen? Why are you here? Am I dreaming? It's so strange. What happened? Xiaoyu, don't be afraid. You're not dreaming. Xiao Chen comforted Nie Xiaoyu gently when he saw how flustered she was. You must have suffered a qi deviation and fainted here. Fortunately, the spirit beast Bai Zhe found you by accident. Furthermore, I came here to look for a treasure and happened to bump into it. That's why it told me about this and brought me here. Looking at Nie Xiaoyu's pale and panic-stricken face, Xiao Chen couldn't help but feel a little guilty. If he hadn't chosen to let her in, she might still be in the mortal world and wouldn't have encountered so many troubles. Thank you. Nie Xiaoyu's mind was still a little muddled. She nodded subconsciously and thanked him softly. I'm fine. Can you sit up? Check if your injuries have improved, Xiao Chen said as he patted Nie Xiaoyu's shoulder. Just as she was about to sit up, Nie Xiaoyu suddenly paused and a thought flashed through her mind. Cheng Menjing is still in those people's hands. At this thought, Nie Xiaoyu jumped up and grabbed Xiao Chen. She said anxiously, Xiao Chen, there's green poisonous gas everywhere in here. It's very dangerous. Hurry up and leave. Don't worry about me. I'm a zombie. I'm not afraid of these things. The key is that they've captured Cheng Menjing, Miss Cheng. Hurry up and save her. I'll meet up with you after I find the amethyst nefarious lotus. What? You said that Menjing has been captured. Who are they? Xiao Chen was shocked. He tightened his grip on Nie Xiaoyu and asked with a serious expression. Also, you said that you're looking for the amethyst nefarious lotus? Why are you looking for it? This poisonous gas is useless to me. Tell me what happened. Nie Xiaoyu's words were like a bomb exploding in Xiao Chen's ears. First, Qing Minjing had been captured by an unknown force, which had already made Xiao Chen's heart in his throat. The second half of the sentence shocked him even more. Nie Xiaoyu's purpose in coming to the Green Demonic Valley was actually to find the amethyst nefarious lotus. This was too strange, wasn't it? Nie Xiaoyu was just a cultivator, and she came from the internal martial arts world. How could she know the function of the amethyst nefarious lotus? With just a flash of thought, Xiao Chen immediately deduced that Nie Xiaoyu must have been threatened by someone to collect the amethyst nefarious lotus. Those who threatened her were probably the people who had captured Qing Minjing. Seeing the skin on her arm deformed by Xiao Chen's pinching, Nie Xiaoyu could also feel the anxiety in his heart. She was about to describe what had happened before, but Xiao Chen had already realized his rash behavior. I'm sorry. Did I hurt you? Xiao Chen quickly let go of his hand and apologized in embarrassment. Haha, it doesn't matter. I don't feel any pain. It's okay even if you break my arm. Nie Xiaoyu smiled self-deprecatingly. Without any delay, she briefly explained what had happened after she and Li Xiener entered the cultivation world. After listening to Nie Xiaoyu's description, Xiao Chen pinched his chin and pondered for a while. Then he raised his question. According to what you said, you just went to the Chamber of Commerce for immortal cultivators to register in the morning, and at night you encountered people who kidnapped you. The kidnappers seemed to know your address and went straight to you. It seems that there is something wrong with this Chamber of Commerce. Nie Xiaoyu blinked and also felt that Xiao Chen's analysis was reasonable. She nodded and said, well, later when I was alone I thought about it carefully. It is indeed as you said. The Chamber of Commerce for immortal cultivators may be in cahoots with those bad guys. Damn it. What about Qing Minjing? How did she get caught? How did you meet each other? Xiao Chen asked the question he was most concerned about. I don't know how she was captured. I only know that after I was captured, Miss Qing also came in. They locked her in the same room with me. Later, she seemed to want to say something to me, but before she could finish, I was taken away. Nie Xiaoyu was silent for a while and said with some uncertainty, but from her tone, it seems that she knows that young master. Well, I don't know who is behind this Chamber of Commerce. It looks like a well-behaved shop, but I didn't expect it to do such a despicable thing. Xiao Chen clenched his fist and said unhappily. Nie Xiaoyu lowered her head in shame and whispered, I'm sorry. They are too powerful. Even if I have the strength of the peak of the nascent soul stage, I can't help Miss Qing escape. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault. You don't have to blame yourself too much. Xiao Chen waved his hand and his tone became softer. Before I entered the valley, I happened to meet Li Xiener. She is very worried about you and she is still waiting outside. Let's go collect the purple nefarious lotus first, and then leave the valley to find them. Chapter 15-18. You saw Sister Xiener? Nie Xiaoyu's eyes lit up, and she finally looked happy. It's great that she's fine. Yes, after we meet up with them, we'll go and rescue Miss Qing Minjing. Xiao Chen smiled, but a hint of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He said word by word, I'd like to see who dared to kidnap her. After that, Xiao Chen gave Bai Zhe a look, signaling it to hurry over and get ready to carry Nie Xiaoyu. Judging from the clues provided by Nie Xiaoyu, Xiao Chen guessed that the people who imprisoned Qing Minjing were probably from the inner martial arts world, and it was very likely that they were either Gong Sun Yen or Shishan Giant Bull. After all, after thinking about it, those who could kidnap Nie Xiaoyu and Qing Minjing must know him, but only these two groups of people had a grudge against him. According to Xiao Chen's deduction, they must have joined some forces, or they might have found the old ancestors of the sects who came in before. Otherwise they would not dare to kidnap and blackmail people. What? Why do you want me to be your mount again? Bai Zhe complained irritably, I already said that I'm a high-level spiritual beast, how can I always do this kind of hard work? Besides, she's not seriously injured, why do I have to carry her? In order to express its dissatisfaction, Bai Zhe raised its front hooves and stomped on the ground, making two loud dong-dong sounds. After stomping, it still obediently came to Nie Xiaoyu. You can talk? Also, your voice is so strange. Why does it sound so familiar? I feel like I've heard it somewhere before. Nie Xiaoyu blurted out as she looked at Bai Zhe in surprise. She then lowered her head and pondered for a moment, but she could not recall anything at the moment. Hey, don't talk nonsense. The spirit beast could not help but twitch its mouth and it quickly explained, A few days ago I ate too much, so I was just taking a stroll nearby. You somehow fainted while running. It's none of my business. A high-grade spirit beast like me would never do something so immoral as scaring people. Although Bai Zai's flustered expression only flashed by, Xiao Qin still caught it right away. When he recalled in Xiaoma's doubtful muttering earlier, Xiao Qin came to a sudden realization, and his face darkened right away. I was wondering why you were so kind. It turns out that Nie Xiaoyu's qi deviation was just a play that you directed yourself. In a fit of rage, Xiao Qin kicked Bai Zai's spirit beast hard and cursed, "You're quite shameless, aren't you? How dare you treat this as a secret and exchange it with me? Is there something wrong with your brain?" Roar! Bai Zai howled in pain and cold sweat flowed down its forehead. It was thinking about what reason it should use to cover up the matter. Before Bai Zai could come up with an excuse, Nie Xiaoyu suddenly slapped its head and pointed at it. "That's right. I was in a daze at that time and I heard you talking. No wonder I thought it sounded so familiar. Your voice is too strange and I can't forget it if I've heard it before." "Impossible. You said that you were in a daze just now, so how could you still hear my voice? You obviously remembered it wrongly." Bai Zai widened its eyes and tried its best to quibble. "I said that you're stupid, but you still won't admit it." Xiao Qin slapped Bai Zai again and said snappily, "When a person is in a coma, their sense of hearing declines the slowest, so they can naturally hear what's going on around them. Oh, I forgot, you're not a human, so you naturally don't know about human physiology." Bai Zai felt wronged. It wanted to argue, but Xiao Qin stopped it. "All right, I won't argue with you for now. Bring us to the amethyst nefarious lotus first. Once we're done here, I'll think about how to punish you for your crime." "Xiao Qin, are you here to collect the amethyst nefarious lotus as well?" Nie Xiaoyu asked curiously with her head tilted as she climbed onto Bai Zai's back with Xiao Qin's help. "Yes, I'll find a chance to tell you the details later. For now, just hold on to this fella's mane. It runs like an idiot and doesn't care about the feelings of the person on its back." Xiao Qin reminded her and jumped onto Bai Zai's back. Nie Xiaoyu nodded obediently and grabbed onto Bai Zai's mane. Since the amethyst nefarious lotus was something that Xiao Qin wanted, it must have a very important function, and he must have his own reasons, so she didn't want to ask too much. "When did I?" Just as Bai Zai was about to retort, Xiao Qin knocked its head. Then Xiao Qin urged loudly, "Why are you still standing there in a daze? Hurry up and go." When Nie Xiaoyu saw Bai Zai being scolded by Xiao Qin, she couldn't bear it anymore. Just as she was about to speak up for it, she felt a strong force coming toward her. Her body leaned back involuntarily, and she directly leaned into Xiao Qin's arms. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no blood flowing in Nie Xiaoyu's body, her cheeks would definitely be as red as an apple by now. Before she could adjust her sitting posture, she could already hear the wind whistling by her ears. The trees on both sides flew past her at an extremely fast speed, and they looked like double images. Not only did its butt hurt from the kick, but its face was also swollen and red from the blow just now. Furthermore, its head was ringing from the knock. Bai Zai wanted to shake its body and directly throw the two people on its back away. However, it also knew that the strength gap between them was too big. Even if it vented its anger for a moment, it would have to pay back hundreds or thousands of times in the future. Therefore, it could only obediently accept its fate and carry Xiao Qin and Nie Xiaoyu to the depths of the Green Demonic Valley. At the same time, the second leader and the young leader who were stationed outside the Green Demonic Valley found that Tang Tang, who they sent out, had already collected the purple nefarious lotus and was on her way back. Seeing that everything went smoothly this time, the second leader and the young leader couldn't help but be overjoyed. They didn't have time to celebrate. The second leader immediately contacted the first leader with a voice transmission rune and reported the current situation. After hearing the news, the first leader was naturally very excited. He immediately ordered the second leader to come back immediately and take charge of guarding the headquarters. Then he personally led his people to protect the crystal shield containing the primordial spirit in the secret room, as well as a lot of equipment that had already been prepared. He carried these things to the outside of the Green Demonic Valley without stopping. The purpose of the first leader was also very simple. He wanted to get the purple nefarious lotus, then use a complicated method to refine it, and then rebuild the body of his primordial spirit boss. Chapter 15-19. After arriving at the Jade Green Demonic Valley, the leader did not have time to rest. He chopped down trees and used materials to build a house overnight. He was going to put all the equipment and the crystal barrier in the house and wait for Tang Tang to leave the valley with the amethyst lotus. Due to the commotion from the leader's side, Wu Gang and Dou Ling, who were observing from the side, finally realized that something was wrong. After a short discussion, they decided to let Wu Gang stay and monitor the situation, while Dou Ling immediately went to find a water source and reported to the leader of the Huanchen Pavilion. A few hours later, the sect master of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion, Fu Qinghao, also quickly arrived at the scene. There was also a group of people following behind him. Apart from the disciples, there was also a huge bronze cauldron being pulled by a horse carriage. The cauldron was extremely huge. There were strange incantations carved on it, and every incantation was glowing with a faint green light. The holes on the cauldron would emit green smoke from time to time, as if there was a vast power within it. It looked extremely mysterious. Behind the carriage that was pulling the bronze cauldron was a dozen strong men. Each of them was holding a small cauldron, but these small cauldrons looked relatively ordinary. They didn't have the solemn feeling of the big cauldrons. After the strong men arrived at Wu Gang and Dou Ling's location, they carefully placed the cauldron in a suitable place. Then they took out axes, saws and other tools and quickly ran into the surrounding forest to chop down the towering trees. Fu Qinghao did not follow the strong men to chop down the trees. Instead, he stood at the same spot and listened to Wu Gang and Dou Ling's report. After listening, his expression became a little solemn. He first glanced at Hong Zhu and Li Xianer, who were standing not far away, then he turned around and looked at the busy construction scene on the opposite side. Fu Qinghao's sharp eyes quickly swept around, and his gaze finally stopped on an old man. A cold light suddenly burst out of his eyes, and a murderous aura shot out like a bolt of lightning. The old man seemed to have immediately sensed Fu Qinghao's murderous aura. He flew up and stood on a huge rock. At the same time, a terrifying aura shot out from his eyes. He and Fu Qinghao were separated by a small lake in the middle. They stared at each other and did not want to lose to each other in terms of aura. Just when the two groups were about to start fighting, Xiao Qin, who was looking for the amethyst lotus in the jade-green demonic valley, also noticed something strange. Stop. Xiao Qin pulled the wildly running bay spiritual beast to a stop and stopped at the side of a huge rock. He stared coldly at the two male corpses on the ground not far from each other. He could not help but feel a little suspicious. These two people. Why were they here? Xiao Qin, are the two people on the ground dead? Why do I feel that they look familiar, as if I've seen them somewhere before? Nie Xiaoyu also frowned and looked at the two bodies on the ground. The two bodies on the ground were naturally Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao. However, they were already bleeding from their 7 orifices and could not be more dead. Nie Xiaoyu had met them once when she was waiting for the teleportation at the Heavenly Awakening Gate, so she had some impression of them. Oh, they're just two idiots. They probably thought there was some treasure here, so they wanted to come in and make a fortune. In the end, not only did they not get anything, but they also lost their lives. Xiao Qin came back to his senses and said disdainfully. Xiao Qin recalled that Jia Tuyao and his father racked their brains to deal with Jia Muzhen. Gong Sun Yen also changed from arrogance to respect. They were not good people. He did not expect that they would lose their lives here. It could be said that evil had its retribution. So that's how it is. Then should we find a place to bury them? Nie Xiaoyu nodded and asked softly. There's no need. These people deserve to die. Xiao Qin withdrew his thoughts and shook his head. Then he pulled on the mane of the Baizé spirit beast and asked, how far do we have to go to get there? It's about 1 kilometer ahead. There's a terraced field. That's it. Hearing that Xiao Qin rejected Nie Xiaoyu's suggestion, the Baizé spirit beast immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Xiao Qin did not bring the 2 dead bodies up. Otherwise, its beautiful and soft fur would definitely be dirted by the blood. Then hurry up. Stop dilly-dallying. Xiao Qin shouted loudly. In any case, it did not matter if Gong Sun Yen and Jia Tuyao died. It would prevent them from harming Jia Muzhen and little Chick Xing. When he returned, he would remember to inform them. The Baizé spirit beast puffed out a few mouthfuls of white mist from its nose. It unwillingly continued to run forward. It complained in its heart, it's all because of you. You forced me to stop and look around. As a result, I was delayed. In the end, you blame me for not doing my best. Damn it. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't defeat you, a high-level spirit beast like me would not be ordered around by you. After running for less than 2 minutes, the Baizé spirit beast finally arrived at the terraced field where Tang Tang had picked herbs. However, as soon as it saw the terraced field, its expression changed. It looked around in horror and stood there dumbfounded. Its mouth was wide open and it could not close it no matter what. It did not know what to say. The purple mist lotus that had been growing here had all disappeared inexplicably. Most importantly, except for the purple mist lotus, all the other natural treasures were gone. This place was originally used as a storeroom by the Bai Zhe spirit beast, so it did not usually come here. It would only come here to forage for heaven and earth treasures when it could not find another place to forage for food. What's more, the territories of different spirit beasts in the Green Devil Valley were divided. People would not easily step into the territory of other giant spirit beasts to look for food. Since the Bai Zhe spirit beast had made a name for itself here, other spirit beasts would not disturb it. Therefore, when it saw the place was destroyed like this, it was dumbfounded. What the F***CK, are you kidding me? I haven't even seen a single violet flower petal. Could it be that this shabby place is the treasure land that produces amethyst evil lotus like you said? Xiaoqin frowned. He jumped off the back of the Bai Zhe spirit beast unhappily and walked toward the terraced field. Nie Xiaoyu also followed him closely. Xiaoqin walked to the edge of the terraced fields and took a closer look. However, he discovered some strange clues. The natural treasures in the terraced fields were growing in a strange state. The places where there should have been plants now looked like they had been cut by a lawnmower. All that was left was neat stubble. Chapter 15:20. Xiaoqin turned his head to look at the other areas that had not been cut. He discovered that there should have been all sorts of natural treasures growing there, but at this moment, it looked like they had been forcefully eaten by some kind of animal. There were even many bumpy teeth marks on them. After looking around, Xiaoqin judged from the traces left behind that it should not have been caused by other spirit beasts. Instead, it seemed more like it was man-made. However, could there be someone like the Bai spirit beast in the Jade Green Demonic Valley? Not only was it unafraid of the poisonous gas, but it could also feed on natural treasures? Bais finally noticed the abnormality and stuttered, "Xiaoqin, I really didn't lie to you. There were indeed many purple mist lotuses here before. But, it seems that they had been picked before we came. Look, some of the roots are still steaming. I guess the person who came to pick them has just left." At this moment, Bais was standing at the edge of the terraced field where the purple mist lotuses used to grow. The roots of the purple mist lotuses were very neat and smooth as if they had been cut by a knife. If they had been eaten by a spirit beast, the cut would definitely not be so neat. What made Bais most depressed was that it would be fine if the person only picked the purple mist lotuses, but why did he take away the other treasures as well? Wasn't he too greedy? Wasn't he trying to cheat me? Xiaoqin, I think this big horse does have a point. Nie Xiaoyu tugged at the corner of Xiaoqian's clothes and said softly, "Why don't we hurry up and follow the marks? Maybe we can catch up with the person who picked the herbs? We can talk to him and maybe he will agree to share some with us. That way when we go back we can exchange for Miss Cheng Menjiang." Nie Xiaoyu naively thought that as long as she could bring back the purple mist lotuses and give them to the second in charge, she could exchange for Cheng Menjiang smoothly. In this way Xiaoqin wouldn't have to risk his life to fight those people. What big horse? I'm a spirit beast. A high-level spirit beast who cultivates immortality. What you're doing is an insult to my character. Bai Zhe immediately protested sternly. It was usually annoyed by strange people comparing it to a horse. How could that be the same thing? How could those lowly domestic animals compare to a high-grade spirit beast like him? Aren't you just a grass-mud horse? What's there to explain? Hurry up and chase in the direction of the purple mist nefarious lotus. What's the point of talking so much? Are you looking for a beating? Xiaoqin hugged Nie Xiaoyu and leaped onto the Bai spirit beast's back. He then slapped the spirit beast's head. "Oh, okay. I'll chase after him. Let's talk things out. Why do we have to resort to violence?" The Bai spirit beast grunted from the beating. It was so angry that it gritted its teeth, but it could only swallow its anger. As it sped along the main road, it carefully stared at the almost undetectable messy marks on the grassland. It was afraid that it would accidentally go the wrong way and be beaten up again. Sitting on the back of the Bai spirit beast, Xiaoqian's expression was a little solemn. A cloud of doubt appeared in his heart. All of this was too strange. Apart from him and Nie Xiaoyu, as well as some special spirit beasts that could survive in the dark green demonic valley, theoretically, no one else should be able to resist the poisonous fog of the dark green demonic valley. Yet, someone could come in and harvest all the purple mist nefarious lotuses before him. It seemed that the people of the cultivation world could not be underestimated. Although Elder Nangong said that the dark green demonic valley was so terrifying, there were still people who could escape unscathed. There was another point of doubt that had been lingering in Xiaoqian's heart. Was the person who harvested the purple mist nefarious lotuses the same person as the person who harvested the other treasures of heaven and earth? If that was the case, why did that person harvest the purple mist nefarious lotuses in batches, but use such a rough method to obtain the other treasures of heaven and earth? If there really were two people and they didn't know each other, then which sects did they belong to? Did they meet each other before? But there were no signs of fighting in the terraced fields. Most importantly, what was the purpose of the person who needed the purple mist nefarious lotuses? Could it be that there was someone else in the cultivation world who knew how to reconstruct the body other than the elder heaven ancestor? Outside the teleportation formation in the dark green demonic valley, the leaders of the two forces were still standing on opposite sides of the lake. They were confronting each other with their auras. They were each accompanied by a few trusted followers, who were also glaring at each other with hostility. They were in a state of mutual hostility. Not far behind them, the disciples of their respective sects were not affected by the auras of the two sides at all. They were still immersed in their construction, and the structure of the houses was gradually taking shape. Great sect leader Fu, what a coincidence that we actually met here. The great leader finally could not hold back and spoke first. Fu Qinghao casually glanced at the great leader, as if he was slightly disdainful of him. He did not reply and only snorted coldly. The great leader smiled faintly. He was not offended by Fu Qinghao's disdain. He still said unhurriedly, "But as far as I know, this doesn't seem to be the territory of your Huanshan pavilion, right? You brought so many subordinates with you today. If you came here to play, it's barely passable. But you're wantonly destroying the natural vegetation here. Isn't it a little inappropriate? Humph! Don't talk nonsense with me. I think you should be very clear in your heart why I'm here." Fu Qinghao said expressionlessly. The breeze on the lake blew through his white hair, revealing a pair of gloomy and indifferent eyes. "I'm really not very clear about this. It seems that your Huanshan pavilion seems to have the idea of snatching territory." The great leader's expression did not change. He casually asked, "Could it be that as the #1 sect in the cultivation world, you're interested in a mere few acres of land? Stop putting on an act." Fu Qinghao ridiculed in a lukewarm tone. Since the purple mist evil lotus grows in the dark green demonic valley, naturally whoever gets there first gets it. Do you think you're the only one who would send people to collect it? The great leader was slightly stunned. Several thoughts flashed through his mind quickly. Is the Huanshan pavilion really looking for the purple mist lotus? Where did they find suitable people? Haven't we already taken down Tang Tang, whom the Huanshan pavilion had their eyes on before? Could it be that they have more channels than us? The great leader had always believed that he was the only one who possessed the richest information channels and connections in the immortal cultivation world. Therefore, even though the Huanshan pavilion was the #1 sect in the immortal cultivation world, he still looked down on them. Chapter 1521. However, Fu Qinghao's words just now made the first master feel a vague sense of unease in his heart. However, at this time, the boss could only pray silently in his heart, hoping that Tang Tang would be lucky and not encounter the people of Huanshan Pavilion in the Green Demonic Valley. Otherwise, it was not a big deal for her to lose her life. If the purple mist lotus was taken away by the other party, he would not be able to explain it to his master. During this period of time, he had worked hard to keep an eye on this matter. If he really messed it up, his master would blame him and he would not have a good time in the future. Although the thoughts in his mind were a mess, the great leader still refused to admit defeat. He put on a fake smile and said, "Hee, look at what you're saying. Of course you can send people in, but if it's my subordinates who get the purple mist nefarious lotus first, then your Huanshan pavilion will have nothing to do with it. After everything is done, my Heaven and Earth Association will be promoted to the #1 power in the cultivation world, and the Huanshan pavilion will have no choice but to resign to their fate and retreat to the second line." Humph, it's too early for you to be complacent. Fu Qinghao stared at the boss and immediately retorted, "The people I sent in are experts at the mountain opening stage. We don't know who will be the winner until the last moment." Having said that, Fu Qinghao was actually not sure. After all, the opponent was not weak, and they had mastered some evil methods that could assist in cultivation. If they injected these things into Tang Tang, then it would not be so easy for him to win this time. Experts at the mountain opening stage. The great master's face changed slightly when he heard that. Fortunately, he was good at hiding it. He turned his eyes away at once and did not let Fu Qinghao discover the abnormality. Then he quietly glanced at the monitor behind him, wanting to see where Tang Tang had gone. For some unknown reason, the surveillance magic tool seemed to have been interfered with. He couldn't see the images inside at all. Only a few vague images would occasionally appear, and he couldn't tell what kind of scene it was. There was no connection between the images. Although the first leader felt somewhat anxious, he could only put on a nonchalant expression and continue facing the Fantasy Dust Pavilion's sect master. From time to time he would test the other party verbally, trying to get some information. Although both sides seemed to be in a state of mutual hostility, they did not make a move. The reason was very simple. In fact, the strength of both sides was about the same. If they used violence now, it would not benefit them at all. It would only bring about mutual destruction, giving the other sects the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Therefore they would only move their lips. Before a new situation appeared, the situation would not worsen further. Just as the two sides were starting to feel sore from staring, the wind on the lake in the middle suddenly grew stronger, and a turbulent undercurrent began to condense. Meanwhile, a huge cyclone appeared above the teleportation formation of the jade-green demonic valley. With the appearance of the cyclone, a gust of wind accompanied by lightning blew up, sweeping the originally calm lake water into the air. Then, a lightning bolt mixed with electric current drilled out of the cyclone above the magic circle like a python, and then smashed heavily in the middle of the teleportation magic circle. Boom! A muffled sound continued to spread in the air, and a big hole was smashed in the teleportation formation by the lightning bolt. Gravel and debris shot out in all directions, and a green mist rose from the magic circle. At the same time, a blurry figure appeared. The first leader and Fu Qinghao both turned their heads to look, trying their best to see who was being teleported out. However, the teleportation formation was still shrouded in green mist, so the figure inside was very blurry. They could not see who it was at all. Both of them knew very well that the green mist was brought out from the valley, and it was highly toxic. Therefore they did not dare to rush to their deaths rashly. They could only stand in front of their respective camps anxiously, waiting for the green mist to gradually disperse. The young master was originally in the crowd at the back. At this time he was also attracted by the noise. When he ran to the lake, the mist around the teleportation formation just happened to disperse, revealing Tang Tang's pretty face. The young master immediately shouted in ecstasy, "Tang Tang! It's Tang Tang!" Ah! Great leader Fu, it seems that this old man has a slight advantage in this round. The green mist dissipated, and the great boss naturally saw the figure clearly. He couldn't help but let out a few complacent laughs towards the sky. Before the laughter died away, the first leader's figure moved. The next moment he appeared next to Tang Tang and grabbed her backpack. Then he once again displayed his body movement skill and could not wait to return to his own camp, leaving Tang Tang to slowly walk from the teleportation formation alone. At this time, Fu Qinghao's face was very ugly. On one hand he was very dissatisfied that the first person to come out was Tang Tang. On the other hand he was a little surprised by the strength of the first leader. This guy seemed to be more powerful than before. Seeing the first leader's complacent look, Fu Qinghao was very unhappy. He pretended to be calm and said, "Then I will congratulate you in advance. However, the strength of the person I sent in is also very high. It will not take long for him to come out smoothly. Then you guys wait slowly. Maybe in another 8 to 10 years, you guys can wait for that person to come out." Ah! The first leader laughed very arrogantly for a while. While mocking Fu Qinghao, he lowered his head to check the purple mist lotus in his backpack. After confirming that everything Tang Tang collected was authentic, the first leader could not hold back his excitement. He immediately carried his backpack and quickly walked to the wooden house that his men had built. Facing the unscrupulous ridicule of the first leader, Fu Qinghao was extremely angry, but he did not dare to explode on the spot. After all, the other party was holding the purple mist lotus. If the two sides fought, it would not benefit him at all. Fu Qinghao now hoped that Xiao Chen could come out quickly. If he could not get the purple mist lotus before the first leader finished his work, then the Huanshan Pavilion might really have to bow down to the first leader in the future. Tang Tang glared at the proud young leader in front of her. Looking at his face of a villain intoxicated by success, she could not wait to drag him into the green demonic valley again and poison him to death. However, considering that Cheng Menjing was still in his hands, and even if she poisoned him to death, she might not be able to smoothly escape from the Heaven and Earth Association. Tang Tang could only forcibly suppress her anger and asked word by word, "I have got the thing for you. Now can you fulfill your promise and let me leave with Cheng Menjing?" Chapter 1522. Oh, why are you in such a hurry? Cheng Minjing, Miss Cheng is in the cabin over there. But let me give you a suggestion. You might as well wait here for a while. There will be a good show to watch later. I guarantee that you won't want to leave again after watching it. The young master said with a mysterious face. I'm not interested. Besides, I only promised to help you collect the amethyst nefarious lotus. I didn't promise anything else. Now that the task has been completed, you must immediately release me and Cheng Minjing. Tang Tang refused directly with a cold face. Even if I don't release Cheng Minjing, what can you do to me? The young master crossed his arms in front of his chest and shook his legs proudly. Tang Tang's face immediately darkened. She pointed at the young master's nose and shouted, Do you want to break the promise? An evil smile suddenly flashed across the corner of the young master's mouth. He said in a strange tone, I remember that you people entered the cultivation world this time to look for you and Xiao Chen's parents, as well as Cheng Minjing's second uncle, right? Don't you want to know where they are now? You know where they are? Tang Tang was stunned when she heard the young master's words. She was shocked and immediately said with a suspicious face, You're not saying this on purpose so that I can continue to stay here and help you do some dirty things, are you? Humph, believe it or not. Anyway, you can decide what to do next, but the premise is that you have to wait for us to finish the most important thing. The young master shrugged and said lightly, When the time comes, you and Cheng Minjing can go wherever you want. No one will stop you. After that, the young master snorted again. He didn't want to talk to Tang Tang anymore. He ordered his men to keep an eye on her and turned to walk in the direction of the cabin. Tang Tang gritted her teeth and stared at the young master's back. She clenched her fists and pondered for a moment. Then she resolutely followed the young master and walked toward the cabin. Tang Tang planned to go in and see what these people wanted to do with the amethyst nefarious lotus. If she had the chance to meet Xiao Chen in the future, she would tell him all these secrets. In the newly built cabin, in addition to the crystal shield containing the spirit, there was also a huge electronic device placed in the most eye-catching position. It was so high that it almost reached the ceiling. The device was divided into 2 layers. The upper layer was a cylindrical glass carrier filled with fluorescent viscous liquid, and the lower layer was a computer with an LCD display that was flashing green light. There was also a large place to install the battery in the back half of the device, so even in the wilderness, there was no need to worry about power shortage. At this moment, the great leader was operating on the computer according to the instructions of the primordial spirit in the crystal cover. In addition, there were a few subordinates in white uniforms working hard to grind the purple mist black lotus, and then proceed with the first step of purification and quenching. Every time a plant was quenched, the medicinal powder would be poured into a beaker, and then carefully poured into the cylindrical glass carrier of the large instrument. And the spirit floating in the crystal shield was pointing with a cold voice, The bridge of the nose on the face should be higher, the eyes can be bigger, the hair color can be set to the shape of golden waves, and the color of the pupils should also be changed to gold. This way it will look more fashionable. Yes, Miss Luan, everything is done according to what you said. The great master was very flattering. After setting all the settings, he thought for a while and turned his head to ask, By the way, do you think I should make the chin sharper? When I was in the secular world, I saw a lot of models. All of them had a sharp chin, white skin, and looked like little porcelain dolls. They were quite pretty. Yes. Must have a sharp chin. Miss Luan agreed and reminded again, I've told you many times, don't call me Miss Luan, call me Master or Queen Luan. Hey, Queen Luan. The great master changed his address a little awkwardly. He tapped on the computer and finished setting the shape of the chin. When he was about to report, he heard Miss Luan's instructions again, Also, don't leave any fat on my waist. My chest can be set to D. Of cup. The butt should be round and perky and the legs should be long but not too slender. It must give people the vibe of a queen at first glance. I understand. The great master blinked his eyes speechlessly. He obediently set the settings according to Miss Luan's requirements again. Seeing that she had no new ideas, he enlarged the model of the female human body on the LCD display and introduced it to Miss Luan. Master, everything has been done according to your requirements. Please take a look and see if there are any other problems. Miss Luan made an "oh" sound and carefully looked at the face, facial features and upper body of the model. Gradually she showed a satisfied smile. The great master sighed softly. However, before he could relax for long, when Miss Luan's gaze continued to move downwards, her face changed. She roared at the lower body of the model, "What the hell is this? Why is it so dark there? And there is so much hair. Who do you think I am? Hurry up, change it to a pink-white tiger and remove all the hair under the armpit. Oh, this is the original setting. I haven't even touched it. The great master's old face suddenly turned red, and he weakly defended himself. He didn't dare to say anything more. He quickly lowered his head to operate the computer, removed all the excess hair and changed some parts to pink. He muttered in his heart, "This Queen Yuan knows quite a lot. She can even say the words white tiger. It seems like she is also an experienced person." Boom. Just as the model was about to be set up, there was a sudden muffled thunder outside. Then there was a commotion in the crowd. The great master's heart moved. He faintly guessed that the people from Fantasy Dust Pavilion had come out. However, he was very busy at the moment and really didn't have the time. He could only give the young master a look and ask him to go out and see what kind of people were sent into the Green Demonic Valley. The young master nodded in understanding and quickly ran out of the door. He came to the lakeside with familiarity and opened his eyes wide. He saw a huge thing standing in the transmission array. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like a human. What is this? The young boss stared blankly for a moment before taking a closer look. Only then did he realize that there seemed to be two human figures sitting on the upper half of the gigantic object. At this moment they were tightly pressed together. It seemed that the gigantic object was a mount. Chapter 1523. Just as the young master was seriously studying it, the huge figure suddenly moved slightly and then disappeared into thin air. Everyone was shocked. Just as they were about to shout, the two people and their mounts appeared again and stood steadily on the shore. Xiao Qin. Seeing the two people, the young master was dumbfounded and could not help but exclaim. The person sitting on the white horse in front of him had a familiar face. Even if he turned into ashes, he would still be able to recognize him. It was Qin. How could he be from Huanshan Pavilion? Moreover, wasn't the person sitting in front of Qin Ye Xiaoyu? Could it be that Ye Xiaoyu was not dead? Had she been coincidentally saved by Qin? When Qin heard a man call his name, he looked in the direction of the young master in confusion. Suddenly, a surprised expression appeared on his face. He pointed at the young master and said, "Situ Qitian? It's you, you idiot. Why aren't you dead yet? Didn't I send you flying with a slap just now?" It turned out that when the cyborgs were teleported to the world of cultivation, Situ Qitian had also been sent here by a slap from Qin. Moreover, his face had hit the ground and he had been seriously injured. Who would have thought that the dying Situ Qitian and the group of cyborgs would be teleported to a certain spiritual crystal vein? Coincidentally, they were discovered by the great master who had come to inspect them. Then he brought them back and used many precious treasures to save Situ Qitian from the brink of death. Then he brought the cyborgs to the spiritual crystal vein and made them start mining step by step. After Situ Qitian woke up from his coma, he discovered that the great master who had saved him was actually the former sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect, Situ Haotian. The spiritual crystal vein happened to be Situ Haotian's business. In order to prevent Situ Haotian from discovering that he was plotting to usurp power in the inner world of martial arts, Situ Qitian suddenly had a bright idea. He knelt down on the spot, kowtowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times, using the reason of thanking Situ Haotian for saving his life as an excuse to recognize Situ Haotian as his adoptive father. Then he stayed by his side and began to busy himself. Situ Haotian didn't think too much about it. After all, in the isolated and helpless immortal cultivation world, he happened to save a junior from his own sect. He was very happy. Since Situ Qitian was sincere, he didn't refuse and directly supported Situ Qitian as the young master. After obediently working for Situ Haotian for a period of time, Situ Qitian gradually discovered that his foster father's strength was simply unfathomable. Not only did he monopolize several large spirit crystal mines in the cultivation world, but he also managed a huge organization called the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce. The more Situ Qitian learned about his foster father's background, the more surprised he was. He didn't know what Situ Haotian was planning. Later, he simply took the opportunity of a celebration banquet to indirectly inquire about the situation. At that time, the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce had successfully developed and flourished everywhere. Situ Haotian was so happy that he drank a little too much. In addition, he felt that Situ Qitian wasn't an outsider, so he took advantage of the alcohol and told him everything that had happened after he had opened the gate of heaven. When Situ Haotian entered the world of cultivators for the first time, he found that there were many experts here, and they all cultivated internal strength. At that time, his demon venerable great perfection realm strength was nothing here, and no one cared about him at all. Moreover, when Situ Haoyin wanted to eat and stay, he found that money in the secular world couldn't be used here. Basically, spirit crystals were used as currency, or barter was used. In desperation, Situ Haoyin could only scrimp and save, and then work for people everywhere in order to earn some meager spirit crystals to support his daily living expenses. While working, Situ Haoyin gradually discovered a few problems. Although there were a few particularly powerful sects in the immortal cultivation world, they were extremely short of spirit crystals. In addition to being self-sufficient in their own sects, they were used to using treasures of heaven and earth, or mental cultivation methods and martial arts skills to exchange with others in case they needed spirit crystals. Moreover, the information channels of those sects were relatively closed. Once, Situ Haoyin accidentally killed one of their disciples who had come out to gain experience. Originally, he was flustered, afraid that the other sect would come to seek revenge. As a result, after hiding for a while, he found that the other sect didn't know about it at all. What was even more surprising was that there were actually many deserted spirit crystal veins in the immortal cultivation world. Those big sects felt that mining was something for the lower class to do, so they were usually very reluctant to send their disciples to mine. They didn't even have the thought of taking the spirit crystals for themselves. Several times, Situ Haoyin's work task was to mine spirit crystals. Even if he secretly hid a few pieces, no one would find out. After working in the immortal cultivation world for a while, Situ Haoyin finally pondered over it. This was a huge business opportunity. After thinking for a long time, Situ Haoyin gritted his teeth and resolutely gave up the idea of continuing to work. He left the immortal cultivation world and returned to the secular world to study for a period of time for an MBA. Then he set out from the inner martial arts world, bringing with him all the top-grade spirit jades in the open heaven gate, as well as the first batch of experimental biohumans. He once again broke into the immortal cultivation world, preparing to show off his skills. In the immortal cultivation world, top-grade spirit jades were equivalent to spirit crystals. So, after Situ Haoyin once again entered the immortal cultivation world, he immediately used the capital he had on hand to rent a place for the biohumans to settle down. Then he looked for a relatively large spirit crystal vein and instructed the biohumans to excavate it day and night. After digging out the spirit crystals, Situ Haoyin sold them at a high price. Very quickly, he accumulated a part of his capital. Then he once again used the same trick and bought a spirit crystal vein that no one cared about. Just like that, it snowballed. Very soon he went from being unknown to the public to being a rich tycoon. As the saying goes, the weather is unpredictable. Just as Situ Haoyin's mining business was flourishing, he once went to an ore vein deep in the mountains to inspect it. In the end, because of the biohuman's careless operation, the ore vein directly collapsed. Under the protection of many biohumans, Situ Haoyin was lucky enough to escape. He was not directly crushed to death by the spirit crystal vein. However, he and the biohumans were buried deep underground. With the biohumans leading the way, Situ Haoyin and the others continued to go deeper into the ore vein. When they wanted to explore the other side of the exit, they coincidentally met Miss Luan, who was recuperating in the crystal shield. Miss Luan naturally would not let Situ Haoyin go. She immediately displayed her strength and offered him extremely attractive conditions. Then they hit it off immediately and became close partners. Chapter 1524. After escaping from the mine, Miss Luan began to provide high-level technical support to Situ Qitian, and once again modified the biohumans to make them more efficient. Meanwhile, Situ Haoyin began to establish the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, mainly responsible for helping Miss Luan inquire about the whereabouts of the Purple Mist Nefarious Lotus, as well as establishing a good relationship with the major sects and families in the cultivation world. After hearing that the Purple Mist Evil Lotus was in the Dark Green Devil Valley, Situ Haoyin immediately increased the expansion of the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce. In addition to making a lot of money for research, he also wanted to find suitable candidates to go to the Dark Green Devil Valley to collect the Purple Mist Evil Lotus. After Situ Qitian finished listening to his adoptive father's description, he couldn't help but admire the other party's business acumen. Then he had a flash of inspiration and came up with a rotten idea, which was to let him lead a group of mountain bandits to plunder the places where the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was having a hard time developing. When those merchant sects couldn't hold on anymore, they would have to rely on the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to hold the fort. Situ Haoyin immediately agreed to Situ Qitian's suggestion. The two of them planned for a while and arranged for a bandits' hideout in the impoverished Baxian County. They then set up a mountain bandits' nest in Lucian County and began to plunder without restraint. As expected, it was quite effective. Just as the two of them were ambitiously preparing to go all out, the leader of the bandits was killed by Cheng Menjing. They had just captured Cheng Menjing, and the mountain bandits' lair had been destroyed by Xiao Chen. Situ Qitian was naturally very depressed. Situ Haoyin had used his old connections and sent out Elder Nangong to kill Xiao Chen without a trace, but he had failed and returned. In addition, the search for the purple mist nefarious lotus had already entered the most intense stage, so he had no choice but to have Situ Qitian stop the horse bandits and mountain bandits project. He planned to first use all his strength to find someone who could enter the Jade Green Devil Valley. After that, he sent Nie Xiaoyu to break into the valley but failed. He then captured Tang Tang and sent her into the valley. He finally managed to bring back the purple mist lotus, but he didn't expect Xiao Chen to appear in front of him like a god descending from the heavens. Most importantly, when did Xiao Chen collude with Huanchin Pavilion? The Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce didn't investigate this information at all. Situ Qitian, are you stupid? This young master is asking you a question. Aren't you dead? Could it be that he had become a big dumpling? You don't even know how to talk? When Xiao Chen saw Situ Qitian staring at him in a daze, he shouted impatiently and jumped down from Wizard Spirit Beast along with Nie Xiaoyu. You must be Xiao Chen, right? Before Situ Qitian could reply, Fu Qinghao had already surrounded him with a group of subordinates and called out in a very friendly manner. Fu Qinghao was also afraid that Situ Qitian would rise in revolt and do something disadvantageous to Xiao Chen. Hence, he immediately ran over, patted Xiao Chen's shoulder and said warmly, "Hoo, I didn't expect that little friend Xiao is actually so young. Heroes indeed come from youngsters. This time you helped our illusionary dust pavilion greatly. This Fu definitely won't treat you shabbily." Situ Qitian naturally understood the intention of Fu Qinghao's action. It was obvious that he had specially come over to support Xiao Chen. His words implied that Xiao Chen was from the illusionary dust pavilion and warned him not to act rashly. However, Situ Qitian was not a fool. He naturally could not attack Xiao Chen, who he could not figure out immediately. He could only fake a smile and change the topic. "So, Xiao Chen, you've sided with the illusionary dust pavilion? No wonder Great Sect Master Fu thinks so highly of you. I really couldn't tell what your strength is now." Of course. Without waiting for Xiao Chen to speak, Fu Qinghao straightened his back proudly and interjected, "How can little friend Zhao's strength be something that you can probe? If you don't want to ask, then don't ask. What's the big deal? But I'm a little curious. It's not like you have a constitution that allows you to be immune to poison." Situ Qitian's gaze secretly glanced at Nie Xiaoyu, who was not far away, and he continued, "You're not some living dead person either, so why are you still safe and sound after entering the Jade Green Demonic Valley?" Xiao Chen was slightly shocked. Just as he felt that there was something wrong with Situ Qitian's words, he saw that Situ Qitian's gaze was wandering. Following his gaze, he just happened to see Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xianer happily whispering to each other. "So, you're the one who captured Cheng Menjing and Nie Xiaoyu." Xiao Chen was instantly enraged. He grabbed Situ Qitian's collar and roared fiercely, "Hurry up and release Cheng Menjing, do you hear me? Otherwise, believe it or not, I'll make you fly in 128 different postures." Situ Qitian's face flushed red from being suddenly grabbed. He was about to retort when a coquettish cheer suddenly came from not far away. "Husband Xiao Chen, you're finally back. Were you injured in there? I was waiting outside for you so anxiously." As soon as Xiao Chen finished speaking, an exquisite figure threw herself at him. Xiao Chen's expression relaxed slightly, and he loosened his grip slightly, tossing Situ Qitian to the ground. Then he turned around and hugged Hongzhu, whose face was filled with joy. Cough, cough, cough. Situ Qitian coughed a few times and finally managed to catch his breath. Just as he was about to organize his words to ridicule Xiao Chen, he raised his head and saw Hongzhu kissing Xiao Chen a few times. After that, Hongzhu carefully examined Xiao Chen's body and found that there were no obvious wounds on his body. Only then did he relax. The way Hongzhu acted as if no one else was around stunned the surrounding people of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Xiao Chen gently patted Hongzhu's shoulder, then pointed at the Baizé Spirit Beast and Nie Xiaoyu. "We also accidentally found Nie Xiaoyu and that brain-damaged Spirit Beast in the Devil's Valley. It can be considered a pleasant surprise. As for the specifics, I'll tell you in detail later. Hong Zhu nodded obediently. He knew that Xiao Chen had important matters to attend to. After kissing him again, he walked to the side and whispered with Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xian. Turning his head to glare at Sidu Qitian, who had just gotten up from the ground, Xiao Chen's tone became a little dangerous. Sidu Qitian, have you thought it over? Are you going to let him go obediently, or do you want this young master to make you fly a few more times? When Fu Qinghao saw the way Xiao Chen treated Sidu Qitian, he could not help but be slightly taken aback. He immediately realized that there was definitely a grudge between the two of them, and it was probably not a small matter. He immediately rejoiced in his heart. It seemed that this kid was definitely on his side. Sidu Qitian was very displeased. He straightened his clothes, which had been pulled askew by Xiao Chen, and made a mental draft. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, he was interrupted by Fu Qinghao. Little friend Xiao, have you found the materials? Why don't you give them to me first? Once we're done, I'll definitely help you get justice. Chapter 1525. Who the hell are you? I don't even know you. Xiao Chen could not help but roll his eyes. Ever since he came out earlier, this old fellow had been following behind him, trying to please him. It was as if he was very familiar with him. Xiao Chen did not know where he had come from. It was simply ridiculous. Oh, I'm sorry. I was too excited and forgot to introduce myself. The corner of Fu Qinghao's mouth twitched. He forced a warm smile and said, I'm the sect master of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion, Fu Qinghao. Wu Gang and Dou Ling, the ones who asked you to help find the amethyst nefarious lotus, are my disciples. Although he looked warm on the surface, Fu Qinghao was a little depressed in his heart. There weren't many people who dared to speak to him like this in recent years. If it wasn't for the amethyst nefarious lotus, he would have exploded long ago. Oh, it's you. Xiao Chen only noticed Wu Gang and Dou Ling who were following behind Fu Qinghao. He thought of his mission and shrugged helplessly. There's nothing left. Sidu Qitian's men have taken everything. I've searched the entire Jade Green Demonic Valley and couldn't find a single one. Only the root of the amethyst nefarious lotus is left. Xiao Chen could have come out earlier, but in order to reconstruct the Elder Heaven ancestor's body, he still held on to a strand of hope. He searched the demonic valley for a while, but he couldn't find the amethyst nefarious lotus. What did you say? They've all been taken? Fu Qinghao's expression changed. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He pointed at Sidu Qitian's nose and scolded, Sidu Qitian, aren't your men a little too much? They actually took all the amethyst nefarious lotuses? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because no one can restrain you? The reason why Fu Qinghao did not doubt Xiao Chen's words at all and was so certain that he vented his dissatisfaction on Sidu Qitian was not because he trusted Xiao Chen, but because when he saw Xiao Chen come out earlier, apart from the woman by his side and a huge spiritual beast, he was completely clean. He did not seem to be carrying anything at all. Aside from Xiao Chen, the woman was also empty-handed. The spiritual beast did not carry any baggage either. At that time he was still puzzled as to why Xiao Chen had run out without completing his mission. In the end, it turned out that there was nothing left for him to take. Just now, when Sidu Qitian wanted to speak, he was interrupted a few times. At this moment he was so depressed that he simply crossed his arms and rolled his eyes, choosing to ignore them. Although Sidu Qitian was silent, Fu Qinghao wouldn't let him go so easily. He continued to scold him. Don't think that I don't know your background. The Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was founded by you. If you really dare to take the amethyst nefarious lotuses for yourself, I'll spread the news immediately. Let's see how you can survive in the immortal cultivation world. Sidu Qitian finally couldn't take it anymore after being scolded by Fu Qinghao. He put on an indifferent expression and waved his hand. Do whatever you want. If you want to publicize it, then do it. Anyway, it won't be long before our Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce surpasses the Huanshan Pavilion and becomes the #1 force in the immortal cultivation world. We'll see who can't survive then. Ah, you. Shameless villain. Fu Qinghao gritted his teeth in anger. His face turned green and red, but he couldn't do anything to Sidu Qitian, who was holding a precious treasure. He could only stare at him angrily, clench his fists and breathe heavily. You idiot! You're actually from the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce? Xiao Chen was a little surprised to hear Fu Qinghao's words, but he immediately understood. No wonder the Chamber of Commerce used the secular world's rules and regulations. What contract, employment and compensation? It turned out that it was all done by this kid. Looking at Sidu Qitian's complacent look, Xiaoqin frowned and asked coldly, I don't care what organization you're from. I just want to know who you sent to the Green Devil Valley? Was it Qing Menjing? Quickly let her go. Then hand over the amethyst nefarious lotus. Otherwise, I'll tear down your Chamber of Commerce one by one. Little friend Xiao is right. Quickly hand over the thing. Fu Qinghao immediately echoed loudly and looked at Xiaoqin approvingly. He thought that Xiaoqin said this to help Huanqin Pavilion, so he immediately had a good impression of him. Previously he wanted to kill him after getting the amethyst nefarious lotus, but now it seemed that he could let him live in the future. But what Fu Qinghao didn't know was that Xiaoqin really wanted the amethyst nefarious lotus, but not for Huanqin Pavilion, but for the Elder Heaven Ancestor. If he was going to reconstruct the body of the Elder Heaven Ancestor, it would be impossible without this kind of treasure. So once he got the amethyst nefarious lotus, Xiaoqin would definitely hand it over to the Elder Heaven Ancestor immediately. Huanqin Pavilion was nothing. Tiske, you don't have the ability to collect the amethyst nefarious lotus, and you want me to give it to you? You can't be stupid, right? Did you get struck by lightning when you were teleported out just now? Sidu Qitian sneered and pointed to the wooden house not far behind him. He said in a strange tone, the amethyst nefarious lotus is in that wooden house. If you're not afraid of death, then... What? Before Sidu Qitian could finish speaking, he was pushed by Xiaoqin. Losing his footing, he fell flat on his face on the ground, stars spinning around in front of him. Xiaoqin passed by Sidu Qitian, whose head was covered, and turned to look at him. He did not even bother to look at him and headed straight for the wooden hut. The immortal cultivators who were originally standing behind Sidu Qitian wanted to block Xiaoqin's path, but when they saw what was behind him, fear appeared on their faces. They all retreated to the side and made way for him. At first, Xiaoqin was prepared to kill a few people to suppress the situation. He didn't expect these guys to be so obedient and not dare to act rashly. He couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. But looking at their expressions and glancing out of the corner of his eye, Xiaoqin finally understood what the reason was. It turned out that Fu Qinghao was closely following behind him, probably wanting to go in and get a share of the loot. It seemed that the one these people were really afraid of was the sect master of Huanqin Pavilion. Xiaoqin thought to himself, I wonder how strong this old fellow is, to actually make people not even have the courage to resist him? But at this time Xiaoqin couldn't care so much. The wooden house was already in front of him. He directly flew up and kicked open the very simple door. Walking into the wooden house, Xiaoqin saw the crystal shield in the middle of the house at a glance. There was a human-shaped soul floating inside, probably in the shape of a woman. Chapter 1526. Xiaoqin turned his head and saw a huge electronic instrument next to him. The glass carrier in the upper part seemed to be fusing something, and someone was constantly pouring some purple powdery medicinal materials into it. While thinking about what the purple powder was, Xiaoqin inadvertently glanced at some purple petals scattered on the ground. A thought flashed through his mind. It seemed that the powder should be the purified purple mist lotus. Looking at the incredible scene in front of him, Xiaoqin could not help but be confused. He felt very puzzled. How could there be such an advanced electronic instrument in the cultivation world? It was too strange. Moreover, that crystal shield looked very high-end. Who was the female primordial spirit inside? Where did the Dada Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce get this technology? That silly Sidu Qitian did not seem to be the person who could make this kind of thing. Before Xiaoqin could figure out all of this, a voice that was gnashing its teeth suddenly resounded behind him. Little friend Xiao, it was that stinking whore who entered the Jade Green Devil Valley to pick the purple mist evil lotus. Let's kill her first and then take back all the materials. The person who said this was Fu Qinghao. He followed Xiaoqin into the room and saw the crystal shield and the electronic instrument, but he was more concerned about the barrels of purple powdery medicinal materials and Tang Tang, who was sitting in the corner in a daze. After seeing the main culprit, who harvested the amethyst nefarious lotus, Fu Qinghao couldn't help but get angry. If it wasn't for this chick, Xiaoqin wouldn't have failed to harvest even a single amethyst nefarious lotus. This matter was still on her head. Now that all the purple mist lotus had been refined into powder, and more than half of it had been poured into that strange container, there was basically nothing left on the outside. Fu Qinghao was so angry that a vicious idea suddenly came into his mind. He planned to kill Tang Tang first to vent his anger, and then join forces with Xiaoqin to snatch the container. At that time he would study how to use that inexplicable thing. If he couldn't figure it out, he would smash it, and then pour out all the purple mist lotus powder that he had already poured into it. Then he would use his sex treasure, the divine dragon cauldron, to refine it again. Thinking of this, Fu Qinghao felt that the plan was perfect. He took the lead and rushed toward Tang Tang. He thought that since Xiao Chen was on his side, as long as he made the first move, the kid would definitely follow him. When he made his move, Fu Qinghao was still very proud. He thought that after he killed Tang Tang on the spot, Xiao Chen would become a grasshopper on a rope. Their relationship would be so close that he couldn't run away even if he wanted to. The leader, Situ Haoyin, had been focused on the electronic screen. Coincidentally, the female mannequin in the computer had been set up. He turned around and saw this scene. He immediately flew into a rage and shouted, "Fu Qinghao! You old fart, you're simply going too far. You actually dare to attack my people in my territory. Are you tired of living?" In order to prevent Fu Qinghao from destroying the electronic equipment here when he killed Tang Tang, Situ Haoyin immediately activated his mind cultivation method and was ready to rush over to stop him. However, when Situ Haoyin had just taken a step, Miss Luan suddenly said, "You don't have to do anything. Naturally, someone will deal with Fu Qinghao. You just need to stay here and protect the equipment so that it can operate smoothly." Situ Haoyin was wondering who else besides him could restrain the powerful Fu Qinghao. In a blink of an eye, he saw a figure quickly appear in front of Tang Tang. Then he casually lifted his right leg and aimed at Fu Qinghao's chest, who was constantly approaching, and kicked heavily. "You." Fu Qinghao could not help but be shocked when he saw that the person who blocked him was actually Xiao Chen. However, it was too late for him to stop rushing forward. He could only quickly mobilize his primordial chi to protect his chest where his heart was. A hint of gloomy killing intent flashed in his eyes. Fu Qinghao knew that Xiao Chen was just a master at the mountain opening stage and would not pose any threat to him. So, he only needed to protect his vital parts and block this attack. However, Xiao Chen, who originally thought that he was on the same side as him, actually stepped forward to protect Tang Tang. Although Fu Qinghao did not understand why Xiao Chen did this, he had already decided in his heart that when this matter was over, he must eliminate this guy who only paid lip service to him but secretly opposed him. Crack. While he was thinking about the next plan in his heart, Fu Qinghao suddenly heard a crisp sound of bones breaking, and then a sharp pain came from his heart. Fu Qinghao's expression changed. He slowly looked down in disbelief. He saw that his chest, which was originally protected by primordial chi, had been kicked by the tip of Xiao Chen's foot. "Even if you want me to kill someone, you should first figure out the relationship between me and Tang Tang. You even dared to touch my wife. With your stupid IQ, I don't think you need to live anymore," Xiao Chen said coldly. Before Fu Qinghao could say anything, Xiao Chen injected a light primordial chi into the sole of his foot. He glanced at him as if he was looking at a dead man, and then suddenly stomped his foot. An enormous strength instantly pushed Fu Qinghao backward. His body was like an arrow that had left the bow, and with a "so" sound, he smashed a hole in the wooden house that had just been built. Then he shot out of the hole, passed through the lake and set off a series of splashes. Finally, with a clang, he smashed right into the bronze cauldron in the camp of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion. The cauldron was originally standing on the rugged ground, and it had been a little unstable. After being hit by Fu Qinghao, who suddenly fell from the sky, it immediately began to shake, and the shaking became more and more severe. It looked like it was about to fall down. When the surrounding disciples of Huanshan Pavilion saw this, they quickly ran over and wanted to hold the cauldron to prevent it from shaking. However, the strong impact of Fu Qinghao's impact, coupled with the weight of the cauldron itself, made it impossible for those disciples to stop it. The bronze cauldron fell down. First, it mercilessly crushed those disciples into meat paste, and then it smashed unstoppably on the hard ground. A very subtle crack sounded. Suddenly, a faint crack appeared on the bronze cauldron, and then it continued to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, the cauldron had been covered with cracks. With a bang, it broke into pieces and fell to the ground, turning into pieces of copper fragments. As soon as the cauldron broke, a human-shaped spirit floated out of it. It floated around involuntarily, and its expression looked very flustered. Chapter 1527. The primordial spirit floated in the air and struggled a few times. In the end, it couldn't hold on and was immediately blown away by the wind. It turned into air and instantly disappeared from the calm surface of the lake. It had already turned into ashes. The disciples of Huanshan Pavilion who were still in the camp were all dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. The bronze cauldron contained the primordial spirit of their sect's ancestor. After their ancestor's physical body was destroyed, he had been resting in the cauldron, waiting for the day when he could rebuild his physical body. Originally, when they found out that the amethyst lotus had ripened, they excitedly dragged the divine dragon cauldron to the jade-green demonic valley. They were looking forward to getting the amethyst lotus and immediately helping their ancestor's primordial spirit to rebuild his physical body. When their ancestor regained his physical body and came out again, Huanshan Pavilion's position in the immortal cultivation world would be even more unshakable. However, just now, their beautiful wish could no longer be realized because they saw their ancestor's primordial spirit dissipate in the air. The elders of the Fantasy Dust Pavilion all had ugly expressions on their faces. They could see the situation very clearly in their hearts. Sect leader Fu Qinghao was already dead, and the ancestral master was also gone. This news would soon spread to every corner of the immortal cultivation world as if it had grown wings. At that time, the sects and clans that had been following behind the illusionary dust pavilion covetously would immediately swarm over and swallow up the leaderless illusionary dust pavilion cleanly, leaving not even a scrap behind. Thinking of this, the few elders looked at each other and immediately turned to leave silently. They had to find a partner who could give them the most benefits before the news spread. The disciples of Huanshan Pavilion seemed to understand something when they saw this. They hurriedly followed their followers and left. Wu Gang and Dou Ling were nowhere to be found. The once famous #1 sect in the immortal cultivation world had instantly collapsed and no longer existed. Xiao Qin laughed coldly as he looked at the chaotic fantasy dust pavilion not far away. He shrugged his shoulders without a care in the world. The reason why Xiao Qin wanted to kick Fu Qinghao to death just now was that he thought this guy was really a bastard. He had tricked him into the Green Devil Valley to collect herbs, and when he came out he did not ask whether he was dead or alive, but only focused on the purple mist black lotus. The point was that he also wanted to kill Tang Tang, so he might as well just kill her. As for the chain reaction that followed, it was not something that Xiao Qin could predict. Tang Tang didn't know what had happened. She only felt her vision blurred, and then Xiao Qin, whom she missed day and night, suddenly appeared in front of her. At first Tang Tang thought she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes hard and stood up to grab Xiao Qin's arm. Only when she felt his body temperature did she know it was true. She could not help but ask with excitement and concern, "Xiao Qin, why are you here? Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I'm in good health and I'm eating well." Feeling the warmth coming from his arm, Xiao Qin smiled slightly and asked, "Tang Tang, how did you get caught? Have you seen Menjing?" Xiao Qin originally thought that it should be Cheng Menjing who was locked in the wooden house, but he did not expect it to be Tang Tang. The whole wooden house was only so big. Xiao Qin had looked around and there was no trace of Miss Tang. At this time Situ Haoyan was also very shocked. The way he looked at Xiao Qin had become a little cautious. It should be known that Fu Qinghao, as the leader of Fantasy Dust Pavilion, was extremely strong, almost at the same level as him. He did not expect that Xiao Qin could kick him away with a simple kick. This was enough to prove that this guy's strength was already above him. What should I do now? Were they supposed to just watch as he stole all the materials? Will all my hard work in the past few days be in vain? A trace of haze flashed in Situ Haoyan's eyes. Impossible. Even if your strength is superior, so what? Today I came prepared. I must make you kneel at my feet and cry and admit your mistake. I haven't seen her yet. Tang Tang shook her head, pointed to the outside and said, "I'm also waiting for Situ Qitian to release Cheng Menjing. He promised me that as long as I can bring back the purple mist lotus, he will let me and Cheng Menjing regain our freedom. But then he said that he would wait until they finished their business. How about, you catch him and ask him?" Tang Tang stayed in the wooden house to wait for Cheng Menjing. She did not expect that before Miss Tang came, Xiao Qin came. Naturally, Xiao Qin did not want to wait, so he nodded and was about to go out to find Situ Qitian. As a result, this guy ran in happily and shouted as he ran, "Godfather! Godfather Haoyan! Fantasy Dust Pavilion is finished. Their sect leader and ancestral master were dead. From now on, the cultivation world will be our world." Situ Qitian had been pushed to the ground by Xiao Qin earlier. After he got up with great difficulty, he was about to rush into the wooden hut when he was startled by Fu Qinghao, who had been sent flying. Then he saw the scene of Fu Qinghao crashing into the bronze cauldron. Seeing that Fantasy Dust Pavilion was in a mess, Situ Qitian simply did not enter the door. He stayed outside the door and observed for a while. It was not until he saw the other party leave in a hurry that he ran in happily to report the news. Whirled my ass. Xiao Chen interrupted Sidu Qitian's good news, narrowed his eyes and said, "What did you just shout? He's your godfather? So he is Situ Haotian, right?" Sidu Qitian could not help but be shocked when he saw Xiao Chen standing in front of him. He subconsciously took a step back but suddenly realized why he should step back. Just as he was about to muster the courage to refute, he was interrupted by Xiao Chen again. "I don't care how messy your private lives are, and I don't care if you are godfather, godson, or godfather." Xiao Chen looked at Sidu Qitian coldly and said, "In short, you better release Cheng Minjing and hand over all the medicinal powder made from the purple mist lotus. Then I might consider letting you live." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Chen suddenly seemed to sense something. His gaze turned to the female primordial spirit in the middle of the room, inside the crystal shield. Although he could not see her face clearly, he could clearly feel that she was also looking at him coldly. Xiao Chen's heart skipped a beat, and a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. This fellow should be the mastermind behind all this. It was also because she needed the purple mist lotus to shape her body. Otherwise, with the intelligence of two idiots, Sidu Qitian and Situ Haotian, it was impossible for them to create such a sophisticated electronic device. Chapter 1528. Humph. Xiao Chen, for you to be able to come to this place, you are amazing, but your ability is limited to this. Situ Haotian coldly snorted, secretly winking at his subordinates behind him, and then fiercely said, "I want to see what kind of ability you have to take away the purple mist black lotus from my hands. Oh, since you are so kind to invite me, then I will dig out your eyeballs and take a good look." As soon as Xiao Chen's voice fell, a thick true qi suddenly appeared, gradually covering his entire body. In the next moment, Xiao Chen revealed his cultivation at the peak of the sea-splitting stage. Although it looked calm on the surface, it was actually a violent and unrestrained pressure. It was released from Xiao Chen's body and heavily surrounded Situ Haotian and Sidu Qitian. Cough cough. Sidu Qitian's strength was the weakest, and as soon as he was suppressed by Xiao Chen's coercion, he immediately felt as if his neck was being strangled by a pair of invisible hands. His face revealed a horrified expression, and his legs softened as he fell to the ground, involuntarily coughing. Situ Haotian's breathing also stagnated and his expression was very ugly, but he still waved his hand with difficulty, and then took a deep breath and shouted towards Xiao Chen, who was approaching step by step. "Xiao Chen, you stop. If you dare to take another step, don't ever think of seeing your mother again." "My mother? She is in your hands?" Xiao Chen had thought that Situ Haotian would beg for mercy and would even curse, but he never thought that he would say such a sentence and could not help but be stunned. The corner of Situ Haotian's mouth carried a trace of an evil smile as he pointed behind Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen turned his head to look and saw a few staff members dressed in white strenuously carrying out a transparent box from the side door of the wooden house. Inside the box lay a beautiful young woman whose eyes were tightly shut and who seemed to be unconscious. Although Xiao Chen's mother had disappeared when he was very young, and he had not seen her for a long time, but the moment he saw the beautiful young woman, Xiao Chen immediately judged that this must be his closest relative. However, the beautiful young woman was in a deep coma at this time, and could not feel the outside world. "What did you do to her?" Xiao Chen was really angry this time. He did not think that his mother, who he thought was missing, was actually kidnapped by Situ Haotian, and this had already touched his bottom line. "Hey, how is it, are you afraid?" Situ Haotian felt proud and elated. He proudly walked to the side of the transparent box, patted the surface of the box and said, "Right now your mother has only fainted. She is still safe and sound, but the best part is yet to come." Xiao Chen tightly clenched his fists and silently stared at Situ Haotian. If looks could kill, Situ Haotian would have been cut into pieces by now. Ignoring Xiao Chen's murderous glare, Situ Haotian calmly took out a remote control from his bosom and waved it in his hand. He sneered coldly and said, "Do you see the red button on it? As long as I gently press it, the celestial device containing your mother will explode with a bang. Do you want to try and see whether your body is faster or my fingers are faster?" "Xiao Chen, you don't be impulsive, that bastard is shameless and he will certainly do what he said." Tang Tang's complexion changed and she quickly pulled Xiao Chen to appease him. Although the purple nefarious lotus has been harvested by me, it won't take long for it to grow again. When that time comes we can go in and harvest again." There is no need to take this risk and please don't hurt Auntie. Tang Tang's voice was a little choked and she felt very guilty. When she was harvesting, why didn't she leave some? Why did she insist on taking all the purple nefarious lotus back? She did not expect that Xiao Chen would be tricked. Feeling Tang Tang's guilt, Xiao Chen gently patted her cold little hand, indicating that it was not her fault, and that she did not need to bear the responsibility. Ah, little girl, you are too naive. Situ Haoyin suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed and said with a proud face, "Let me kindly remind you that the purple nefarious lotus growth cycle is as long as tens of thousands of years, and this thing's seed is in the stamen. You have already taken all of them out and it is impossible to grow new ones. You should give up as soon as possible." At this time Situ Haoyin was very relaxed. In his opinion, as long as Xiao Chen's mother was still in his hands, it was equal to holding a crucial bargaining chip in the confrontation between the two armies, and Xiao Chen would certainly not dare to act rashly. When he successfully molded the body, and then let Queen Luan obtain a new body, she would certainly be able to easily kill Xiao Chen. Oh, it is impolite not to reciprocate. Since you have given me such a kind reminder, then I will also give you some useful advice. Xiao Chen looked at Situ Haoyin coldly and said, "What else can you suggest?" Situ Haoyin glanced at Xiao Chen contemptuously, thinking that he was struggling on his deathbed. Xiao Chen raised his right hand in the air, gently snapped his fingers and then said with a blank expression, "I suggest you enjoy the feeling of touching things with your fingers because from now on, you will never experience it again." What the hell? Situ Haoyin was slightly stunned, completely unable to understand what Xiao Chen meant by these words. He thought that Xiao Chen must be bluffing, so he snorted very disdainfully, not taking it to heart at all. "Idiot! Be careful behind you. Godfather! There is a sword behind you, get out of the way." Just as Situ Haoyin was planning to humiliate Xiao Chen, Miss Luan's angry voice and Situ Qitian's anxious urging voice sounded at the same time. From their point of view, they could clearly see that a sharp sword suddenly appeared behind Situ Haoyin, and the hilt of the sword was also emitting a black fog, which gradually formed the shape of a hand, tightly gripping the sword, and fiercely chopped down at Situ Haoyin's arm. However, the two's warning was a step too late. Although Situ Haoyin heard their shouts and his heart was alarmed, his body did not have time to react before he heard a burst of sound. Only to hear a kacha sound, Situ Haoyin's right hand, which was holding the remote control, was instantly cut off at the shoulder. His cheek was also dyed red by the blood that gushed out, and a piercing pain shot from his shoulder to his head. Ah! Situ Haoyin could not help but scream, his left hand clutching his right shoulder that revealed the white bone, powerlessly kneeling on the ground. Fortunately, although he was tortured by the pain, he still remembered to use Yuan Qi to seal the artery in his right shoulder, so as not to lose too much blood and die. Chapter 1529. Turning his head with difficulty, Situ Haoyin finally saw the culprit. It turned out that he had been struck from behind by a strange black mist wielding a sharp sword. At this moment, this thing had an evil smile on its face as it swayed back and forth in the air. It didn't look like a primordial spirit, but more like a ghost. "And little demon, keep an eye on this idiot. If any one of them dares to touch that remote control, you know what to do." Xiao Chen instructed indifferently. Then he gave an little demon a look that said, "You know what I mean. Just wait and see. I promise to kill one if they come. If two come, I'll kill a pair." And Xiaoma cackled. He raised his flying sword and stood between Situ Haoyin and the crystal coffin, glaring at the others present. Seeing that Xiaoma had understood his meaning, Xiao Chen nodded and turned to walk in the direction of the electronic instrument. Because he saw that the purple mist lotus powder had begun to dissolve and was slowly being synthesized, he wanted to snatch the material back as soon as possible. "Stop right there." Miss Luan was also anxious and screamed in a sharp voice. As soon as the voice fell, Miss Luan's spirit began to emit a faint white light. The spirit that looked illusory and faintly transparent began to condense, gradually growing hands and feet, and the face became clear. Gradually, it became an existence that was infinitely close to a physical existence. Xiao Chen first glanced at the LCD screen and found that this thing had an extremely complicated operation interface. He estimated that he would not be able to deal with this thing for a while, so he simply turned his head and stared coldly at the crystal shield. "I almost forgot that there is still you." Xiao Chen looked at Miss Luan's petite body that was gradually taking shape and threatened in a deep voice, "If you don't want to disappear like that primordial spirit in the fantasy dust pavilion earlier, You better tell me how to operate this device immediately. Otherwise, I'll smash your crystal barrier into a pile of broken glass. Ridiculous, do you think I really need this crystal shield? Miss Luan sneered, clenched her fist and waved it gently, directly punching a hole in the crystal shield in front of her. Then her body turned into mist again and floated out of the hole. Xiao Chen's brows furrowed slightly. This female essence soul seemed to be a little more powerful than the one in the Fantasy Dust Pavilion previously. Although he looked thin and small, he was able to break the barrier with just a light punch. His strength was not to be underestimated. She is. As Xiao Chen was observing Miss Luan, Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly let out a gasp. What's wrong, Elder Heaven Ancestor? Do you know her? Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows. He felt that the Elder Heaven Ancestor's reaction was a little strange. He had never seen him like this before. Oh, I do. The Elder Heaven Ancestor was silent for a while, then said bitterly, and it's not a small grudge. I was beaten into a primordial spirit state by her, and ended up in the mortal world. What? Xiao Chen was shocked. He did not expect that this ordinary thin woman was the enemy of the Elder Heaven Ancestor. At that time I should have seriously injured her, but I don't know how she turned into a primordial spirit state. The Elder Heaven Ancestor paused, then added, but her strength is indeed very strong. I have no way to determine her current cultivation, you must be careful. Before Xiao Chen had time to answer, Miss Luan was already in front of him. She said coldly, my primordial spirit is much stronger than you think. How can that ant from the Fantasy Dust Pavilion compare to me? I don't need the protection of the container at all. Staying in there is only to recover my vitality and strengthen my primordial spirit body. In that case, I would like to feel how powerful your primordial spirit is. Xiao Chen could not be bothered to talk to the Elder Heaven Ancestor anymore. He shouted angrily, tiptoed lightly on the ground and leaped into the air. He condensed a cyclone in his right palm, and fiercely pushed it towards Miss Luan's primordial spirit. You're Xiao Chen, right? I've heard of your name for a long time. Miss Luan smiled faintly. She did not dodge until Xiao Chen's palm wind was in front of her. Suddenly her body turned into mist again, and she easily dodged the palm wind. Without waiting for Xiao Chen to change his move, Miss Luan's body flashed, and she floated behind him. She instantly condensed into a solid body and quickly kicked him. She said coldly, I really did not expect you to come here, but this is the end. Boom. Xiao Chen's palm strike shattered the crystal shield into pieces, but at the same time he was kicked down from the air by Miss Luan, and a large pit was formed on the ground. The whole wooden house was suddenly filled with dust, blocking everyone's vision. Xiao Chen. Upon seeing this, Tang Tang was very nervous and hurriedly shouted. She was about to run to check on Xiao Chen's condition, but she vaguely saw a figure suddenly flashed out of the big pit and rushed towards Miss Luan like a lightning bolt, fighting with her again. Tang Tang had just breathed a sigh of relief, but her expression changed again. The current situation was obviously very unfavorable for Xiao Chen. Every time he wanted to attack, Miss Luan would directly turn into mist, causing all his moves to fail. Then, she would take advantage of the time when his moves were exhausted to condense into a solid body again to attack him. Xiao Chen had never encountered such a situation. After a few rounds, he had a lot of wounds on his body, and his movements were not as fast as before. He was somewhat unable to cope with it, and he gradually showed signs of declining. The more Tang Tang watched, the more anxious she became. She was racking her brains to think of a way to help Xiao Chen deal with Miss Luan when she suddenly heard footsteps approaching from outside the door. Tang Tang thought that it was the reinforcements of the Heaven-Earth Association that had been left outside, and immediately became very nervous. She immediately assumed an offensive posture, intending to kill the person who had come, and then find a way to join forces with Xiao Chen to kill Miss Luan. Tang Tang. Why are you here? As soon as Hong Zhu stepped into the wooden house, he saw Tang Tang standing solemnly there, glaring at him with a murderous look. He could not help but blurt out in astonishment. Hong Zhu, why are you here? Tang Tang was about to launch her attack, but when she saw that the person who had come turned out to be Hong Zhu, she hastily withdrew her attack and asked in a very surprised manner. I'm going to ask you, what are you doing here? Could it be? When Hong Zhu saw Tang Tang's posture, his expression immediately became strange. Could it be that she was in cahoots with Situ Qitian? Seeing Hong Zhu's suspicious eyes, Tang Tang immediately understood that he had misunderstood her identity. She quickly explained, Hong Zhu, you think too much. I was also captured by them. This is all Situ Qitian and Situ Haotian's plot. They first captured Qing Menjing, and then used her to threaten me, forcing me to collect the purple mist Black Lotus. So, I had no choice but to do it. Chapter 1530. Really? Hong Zhu narrowed his eyes and did not quite believe what Tang Tang said. When he was about to continue asking, Nye Xiaoyu, who had just entered the door behind him, quickly said, Tang Tang didn't lie, Sister Hong Zhu. I was also locked up with Miss Qing Menjing before. They also forced me to pick the purple mist Black Lotus, but I didn't succeed. Tang Tang nodded again and cast a grateful look at Nye Xiaoyu and Li Xianer next to her. I'm sorry, Tang Tang. It seems that I thought too much. Hong Zhu smiled awkwardly and apologized with a bit of embarrassment. It doesn't matter. Let's not talk about this first. Xiao Qin is still. Tang Tang waved her hand. Before she could finish her words, a muffled bang was heard. Then Xiao Qin's body flew out through the big hole that Fu Qinghao had just smashed. Miss Luan also turned into mist again and chased him out of the house. What the hell is that? How dare she hit my husband, Xiao Qin? Seeing that Xiao Qin was actually beaten, Hong Zhu was so angry that his temples throbbed and he felt that his blood vessels were about to burst. He immediately waved to Tang Tang and the other women and angrily said, Sisters, Xiao Qin's husband is being bullied. We can't just ignore it. Everyone come with me. Let's join hands and destroy this thing that's neither human nor ghost. We won't stop until she's dead. Hong Zhu, don't be impulsive. Tang Tang quickly pulled Hong Zhu's hand and said with a solemn expression, Even Xiao Qin is not her match. If we rush forward, not only will we not be of any help, but it will also easily distract Xiao Qin. Let's not go and make trouble. This. Hong Zhu gritted his teeth with some reluctance and stared at the scene of the two people fighting outside, but he did not say anything more. After calming down and thinking about it, Hong Zhu also understood that Tang Tang's words did have some truth to them. It was him who was too hot-blooded. But when he saw Xiao Qin being beaten to the ground by the female ghost again, and he couldn't give any help, Hong Zhu's heart was filled with mixed feelings, and his mood was extremely complicated. On one hand, he was constantly cursing that hateful female soul in his heart, but on the other hand he felt a deep sense of self-blame. Hong Zhu was now very regretful. Why had he been so playful and lazy before, only thinking about being intimate with Xiao Qin, instead of improving his own abilities and working hard to become stronger? After being kicked by Miss Luan again, Xiao Qin's body smashed into a tree trunk and he spat out a mouthful of blood. After being kicked several times in a row, Xiao Qin had realized that Miss Luan had not shown her real strength, but had been using ordinary punches and kicks to tease him, just like a cat playing with a mouse. She would play with him first, and when she was done playing with him, she would use her big move to kill him in one fell swoop. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Xiao Qin did not launch another attack, but first circulated his yuan qi to check his body. He found that there were no other problems for the time being, except for a few bruises on the surface of his body and some slight damage to his internal organs. Staring at Miss Luan, who was leisurely and contented not far away, Xiao Qin asked in his spiritual sea with a bitter face, Elder Heaven Ancestor, this is not the way to go. Sooner or later I will be beaten to death by her. Since you have fought with her, do you know if she has any weaknesses? Do you have a suitable idea to deal with her? It would be best if you could directly blast her to pieces. If I could blast her to pieces, would I still need to stay in your spiritual sea, waiting for my body to be reconstructed? Elder Tian reprimanded in a bad mood, you only know how to daydream in broad daylight. It's obvious that you're not strong enough, yet you're still thinking of killing others in an instant. I can't even see through her cultivation, so how could I see through her weakness? Then what should I do? Xiao Qin frowned and lamented, this old woman is too ruthless. I can't hit her and I can't dodge her either. I'm completely countered by her. There's nothing I can do. Elder Heaven Ancestor pondered for a while, then suddenly gave a suggestion, why don't you try to use the 9 nether flame to burn her? Since she is now in her nascent soul state, she should be very afraid of the unusual flame. Nethery, I will go to distract her. You find a chance to attack her. Xiao Qin made a prompt decision, quickly ordering in his spiritual sea. Then, his feet stomped on the ground and his speed suddenly skyrocketed. Like a ferocious cheetah, he dashed toward Miss Luan. In the process of dashing, Xiao Qin's left hand quietly threw out a wisp of flame, and the cyclone in his right hand instantly became stronger, fiercely smashing toward Miss Luan's face. Haha, are you too stupid or too naive? Don't you realize that your attack can't hit me? Miss Luan saw that Xiao Chen was actually using the same trick, and the corner of her mouth curved into a disdainful smile. Lady Luan's figure gradually became blurry. Just as Xiao Chen's fist wind was about to touch her face, she turned into mist with a "hoo" sound and floated in the air like an illusion. Xiao Chen's fist immediately hit empty air. Luckily, he usually trained, so his body's balance was excellent, and he did not fall because of the inertia of rushing forward. However, when he adjusted his center of gravity, he keenly felt a faint murderous aura quickly approaching. You are really too weak. This queen is too lazy to continue wasting time with you. Go to hell, Xiao Chen. Miss Luan, who had turned into a mist, suddenly appeared on the left side of Xiao Chen. She quickly condensed her nascent soul, preparing to turn into a solid body and kill Xiao Chen in one blow. However, when he repeated the same trick this time, before Miss Luan could completely condense into a solid form, a ball of bluish-purple flame suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Chen out of thin air and quickly flew towards her. Miss Luan's slightly illusory face suddenly changed and she was very surprised, blurting out, "This is 9 nether flame." Ah! There was only a scream, and before Miss Luan could dodge, the bluish-purple flame quickly cut through her arm that had not yet condensed. After a faint sizzling sound, a disgusting smell quickly spread in the air. It smelled like a rotting animal corpse that had been burnt. It was extremely stinky. It really is the 9 nether flame. Looking at her right arm that was burned, Miss Luan could not help but burn with anger. She stared at Xiao Chen and said fiercely, "I didn't expect you to be able to subdue such a good treasure. It is simply a reckless waste of God's gift. Stop talking nonsense, quickly release Qing Menjing. Otherwise, I will let the 9 nether flame burn you, old woman, for 3 days and 3 nights, until there is nothing left of you." Xiao Chen saw that the 9 nether flame was really effective, and his spirit was lifted, immediately retorting. Miss Luan was suddenly so angry that her nose was crooked, but when she heard Xiao Chen mention Qing Menjing, she rolled her eyes and let out a pretentious laugh. "Do you think you are great because you have the 9 nether flame? This queen has a way to get rid of you effortlessly." Chapter 1531. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. Before he could say anything, Miss Luan materialized. She waved her hand and said coldly, "Turn around and take a look. These are the people you have been thinking about day and night." Xiao Chen subconsciously turned around and saw more than 10 people suddenly emerge from the bushes not far away. From their dull expressions and empty eyes, these people should all be biohumans. One of the biohumans was holding a chain in his hand. On the other end of the chain was Qing Menjing, who was tied up by a rope magic tool. However, at this time, her mouth had been sealed with tape so she could not speak at all. Qing Menjing obviously wanted to say something to Xiao Chen urgently. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could only make whimpering sounds. She could not say anything. "Young mistress," Xiao Chen shouted. He clenched his fists tightly and rushed forward with large strides. Just as he was about to save Qing Menjing, he saw that she revealed an extremely anxious expression. Her gaze kept drifting over to the reincarnated incarnate. Xiao Chen followed Qing Menjing's gaze and looked at the biohuman in surprise. Suddenly his body trembled. This biohuman holding the chain, isn't he Qing Menjing's uncle, Qing Zhongqian? At this time, Qing Zhongqian's expression was stiff. He held the chain tightly as if he did not recognize Qing Menjing at all. In the past he used to like this niece of his the most. Looking at Qing Menjing's pained and helpless expression, Xiao Chen's gaze became a little sour. He moved his eyes away with difficulty and looked at the side of Qing Zhongqian. That familiar face. Isn't that my father, Xiao Feng? Dad. Xiao Chen called out, but there was no response. Xiao Feng's expression was the same as Qing Zhongqian's, cold and indifferent. He did not respond to Xiao Chen's call at all. Looking at his unconscious father standing in front of him, and then thinking of his mother who was unconscious in the crystal box in the wooden house, Xiao Chen felt as if thousands of ants were gnawing at his heart. Guilt and discomfort tormented his soul. He had finally found his parents, but Xiao Chen did not feel happy at all. If he had found the clues earlier and found them earlier, would they have suffered less pain? Dad. Mom. Just as Xiao Chen's heart was in turmoil, a sorrowful cry suddenly came from the direction of the wooden house. Tang Tang stumbled out of the wooden house and ran in the direction of the cyborgs. As she ran, she shouted, "Mom, Dad, what's wrong with you? Wake up. I'm your daughter, Tang Tang." It turned out that among the cyborgs, other than Xiao Feng and Qing Zhongqian, Tang Tang's parents were also among them. However, their expressions were lifeless and they did not respond to Tang Tang's call. Tang Tang was so anxious that tears streamed down her face. However, no matter how she shouted, she could not wake up her biological parents. Hearing Tang Tang's shout, Xiaochen immediately woke up. He remembered that he was still in the middle of a battle. Immediately, his body tensed up and he was ready to fight. He glanced in the direction of the cyborgs again and was shocked to find that almost all of them had the strength of the first level of the sea-splitting stage. Xiaochen could not help but be shocked. He did not expect Miss Luan to be so powerful. Even these cyborgs without self-consciousness could be raised to the sea-splitting stage. If these people were placed in the world of immortal cultivation, wouldn't it cause a huge earthquake? You are responsible for watching over Qing Menjing. The rest of you attack together. Kill Xiaochen and those girls. Miss Luan enjoyed the chaotic scene of Xiaochen and the others for a while. Then she maintained her physical form and floated in the air leisurely. She gave a few simple orders to the cyborgs and coldly watched the upcoming show with her arms crossed. The cyborgs received the orders and immediately took action. They pounced on Xiaochen and the others. "Dat Mom? Do you recognize me? Hurry up and come over." Seeing that the cyborgs were moving, Tang Tang immediately went forward and prepared to rescue her parents. Seeing this, Xiaochen's heart sank. He immediately used his movement technique and flashed to Tang Tang's side. He grabbed her waist and quickly left in the direction of the wooden house. However, because of the haste, one of the cyborgs slapped him hard on the back. "Tang Tang, be careful. They have been injected with the drug by that she-devil. They are now cyborgs. They can't hear anything you say." Xiaochen endured the pain coming from his back and shouted at Tang Tang. "Why are you stopping me? Think of a way to save them. They are my parents." Tang Tang cried and shouted anxiously. She constantly struggled and hit Xiaochen. She wanted to break free and rush to find her parents. However, she was still held tightly by Xiaochen. She could not move even half a step forward. Xiaochen quickly brought Tang Tang to Hongzhu. Then he held her shoulders and shook her hard. He shouted, "Tang Tang, don't be silly. Their brains have been controlled by the drug. They have no self-consciousness at all, just like you when you became a cyborgs. Do you want to go and die? They will really kill you." Hearing Xiaochen's words, Tang Tang looked at her parents' lifeless eyes. She could not help but feel a lump in her throat and burst into tears again. In fact, she understood the reason. It was just that she could not suppress her excitement after seeing her parents who had been missing for a long time. That was why she had done such a reckless thing. "Hongzhu, take Tang Tang and Ye Xiaoyu to a safe place. The farther, the better." Xiaochen was also very sad. However, he still gently pushed Tang Tang and sent her to Hongzhu's side. Then he solemnly warned her. "Yes, I understand. My husband Xiaochen, be careful." Hongzhu nodded sensibly. He immediately pulled Tang Tang and the other two women, turned around and ran in the direction of the forest. Although he did not know where the safe place was, he could only take it one step at a time. Hongzhu's first judgment was to get as far away from that female spirit as possible. TSK, I really didn't expect this. Xiaochen, you're actually an infatuated man." Young Lady Luan pretended to clap her hands softly and a cruel smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. "Since you have the guts to face all of this alone, I would like to see if you dare to lay your hands on your own family for the sake of those women." After saying that, Miss Luan gestured to the cyborgs on the ground and rearranged their attack methods. Then she casually dodged the attack of the fire of the underworld. After receiving the order, Qing Zhongqian handed the chain that bound Qing Menjing to another cyborgs. Then, together with Xiao Feng and Tang Tang's parents, the four of them rushed toward Xiaochen. Chapter 1532. Xiaochen clenched his teeth. Looking at the four biohumans who were in a daze, he slowly lowered his raised fist. These people were the people they were most familiar with and closest to. He didn't expect Miss Luan to be so vicious that she would use such a sinister trick. The only thing that Xiaochen was glad about was that the strength of the four biohumans was not too high. With his cultivation at the peak of the sea-splitting stage, even if he didn't fight back, he could easily dodge their attacks. Although he was occasionally grazed by the wind from their palms, Xiaochen didn't think it was a big deal. As long as it wasn't enough to kill him, it didn't matter. The most important thing now was to find a way to wake the biohumans up or stop their attacks so that they would lose their combat power. Ah! Xiao Qin, I didn't expect you to have such a day. Situ Qitian, who had bandaged Situ Haoyan's arm, happened to run out of the wooden house at this time. After seeing this scene, he laughed proudly and said, "You must feel great being chased by your father all over the street, right? I will remember this scene for the rest of my life." After watching for a while with his legs shaking, Situ Qitian realized that Xiao Qin was still able to dodge left and right while being surrounded by 4 people. He was rarely at a disadvantage. He felt a little displeased, so he pointed at the other biohumans who were standing still and instructed, "You guys don't just stand there. Hurry up and take care of Xiao Qin together. Beat him until he's dead." The biohumans also obeyed Situ Qitian's orders. Except for the biohuman who was guarding Cheng Menjing, the others immediately joined the battle after receiving the order. Xiao Qin, who was originally quite relaxed, was suddenly under a lot more pressure. Although these biohumans had no consciousness, they still had the fighting instinct and they were very flexible. Every time Xiao Qin was about to make a move, Xiao Feng, Qing Zhongfan and Tang Tang's parents would take the initiative to rush in front of him. Left with no choice, Xiao Qin could only withdraw his attack. However, just as he was about to unleash his new attack, the other biohumans would rush forward and attack him together with Xiao Feng and the others. In a moment of carelessness, Xiao Qin suffered a few palm strikes in succession, yet he didn't dare to retaliate, causing Situ Qitian, who was watching from nearby, to be overjoyed. He danced with joy and roared with laughter as he pointed at Xiao Qin and ridiculed without the slightest scruple. "Xiao Qin, Xiao Qin, you've been looking for a father for so long, yet you didn't expect that your father would beat you up the moment he saw you, right? It means that as a son you are too unfilial. Motherf ***. Situ Qitian, you're having a good time, aren't you?" Xiao Qin finally couldn't take it anymore. Although his internal organs felt like they were churning, he still gritted his teeth and released his mental strength, instantly controlling Situ Haoyan, who had lost too much blood and was already a little fuzzy in the wooden house. Situ Haoyan's expression froze, and then he picked up the flying sword with his left hand that was still intact. He quietly snuck out of the house, came behind Situ Haoyan, raised the flying sword and slashed down hard. Situ Qitian was watching excitedly as Xiao Qin was beaten up. Suddenly, there was a burst of wind behind his ear, and he immediately realized that the situation was not good. Alarm bells went off in his heart, and he quickly lay down on the ground and rolled like a lazy donkey, trying to avoid the attack coming from behind. However, Situ Qitian's dodging action was still a little too late. Although he rolled on the ground, his calf was still cut by the flying sword, and there was a deep wound, causing him to grimace in pain. Situ Qitian turned around to see who was attacking him, and when he saw who it was, he immediately cursed angrily, "Godfather, why did you cut me? Are you ***king crazy?" Situ Haoyan's eyes were empty and his expression sluggish. He simply ignored his godson's curses and continued to chase after Situ Qitian with his flying sword, slashing at him without any pattern or pattern. Ouch! Situ Qitian was caught off guard and was slashed a few more times. For a moment, he screamed and hurriedly dodged around with his hands on his head. He even grabbed his unrelated subordinates and used them as shields to defend against his godfather's attacks. Xiao Qin sneered and said sarcastically to the panicking Situ Qitian, "How is it? Situ Qitian, the feeling of being chased by your father and slashing at the streets must be very satisfying, right? It shows that you haven't served me well enough." Situ Qitian, who was covering his head and scurrying like a rat, had no time to answer. The attack of the biohumans came at Xiao Qin again. After dodging the wind generated by Xiao Feng's fists, Xiao Qin was slapped twice by Tang Tang's parents. Before he could recover, Xiao Feng and Qing Zhongqian's fists came at him again. Xiao Qin couldn't dodge in time and was hit again, and was directly sent flying. When he was about to fall to the ground, Xiao Qin took the opportunity to stretch out his right palm and support himself on the ground. He took advantage of the momentum and rolled 1.5 times on the ground before he managed to offset the impact. In the end, just as he steadied his feet, the 3 biohumans once again ran towards Xiao Qin. Xiao Feng, who was in the lead, acted as if he had a deep grudge against his own son. He mercilessly kicked Xiao Qin, while the other 2 took the opportunity to swing their fists. It seemed as if they were determined to kill Xiao Qin. What the ***ck? Dad, you're too good at using this combination of skills. You're not leaving your son a chance to live at all. Xiao Qin smiled helplessly and barely dodged the joint attack of the 3 people. He took the opportunity to glance at the situation of the flame of the underworld from the corner of his eye, wanting to know how the battle was going on over there. In the end, it would have been fine if Xiao Qin had not taken a look, but when he did, he nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. Just now, Xiao Chen had already noticed that when Miss Luan turned into a solid body, no matter how the flame of the underworld attacked, it could not cause any substantial damage to her. Only when she turned into a primordial spirit could the flame of the underworld have a chance to burn her. Originally, Xiao Chen hoped that the flame of the underworld could take the opportunity to attack when Miss Luan wanted to change her position and turn into a mist. He did not expect that Miss Luan would not give it a chance at all. She had been standing steadily on the side in her solid state, watching the battle on Xiao Chen's side with interest. The flame of the underworld was carrying out futile attacks on Miss Luan on the side. It either created a large number of clones to sweep over, or it directly rushed at her aggressively. However, no matter how it attacked, it had no effect. It looked like an ant trying to shake a tree. Xiao Chen, it seems that you usually do not train this little thing well. Seeing that Xiao Chen was looking at her, Miss Luan sneered and said, "Such a boring attack, I am too lazy to even dodge. Why don't you let it save its strength?" "Nethery. Think of some other way to deal with her." Xiao Chen shouted helplessly, "Your physical attack is useless against her. You have to find a way to turn her into a primordial spirit." *CK. Chapter 1533. Thick smoke billowed from the blasted blackened land. Some broken human limbs fell from the sky and scattered around the big pit, emitting an unpleasant burnt smell. The whole scene was as horrible as the end of the world. This time, and little demon was dumbfounded. If she broke free, she would hurt the two people who grabbed the sword. But if she didn't let go, she would lose her fighting power and couldn't help Xiao Chen. "Don't move, and little demon. Don't hurt them." When Xiao Chen saw this, he immediately endured the pain and roared. If her parents were hurt, she would be sad for the rest of her life. A breeze gently swept across the lake, gradually blowing away the smoke caused by the explosion. A figure slowly emerged from the dust. Not knowing whether it was because the power of the explosion was too strong, or the sound wave temporarily deafened people, no one around the wooden house spoke for a long time. Xiao Chen lay on the ground, staring at the explosion. For a moment he couldn't react. This voice seemed a little familiar. "Little Nethery, stop. Don't worry about me. Continue to fight with that spirit until you destroy her." Xiao Chen couldn't stand up for a moment. He looked at the flame of the underworld approaching quickly with his eyes wide open. He was burning with anxiety and shouted at the top of his voice. "Really, what the hell is this place? There isn't even an exit." After a while, a soft and neutral voice suddenly came from the center of the explosion. Just as Xiao Chen was distracted to teach the flame of the underworld a lesson, more than a dozen biohumans surrounded him again and launched a new round of fighting, overwhelming punches and kicks. Those biohumans who were standing beside Xiao Chen all swarmed toward Xiao Chen at this time, with murderous looks on their faces. It was obvious that they were going to kill him. However, the flame of the underworld could not listen to Xiao Chen's orders at this time. It shot over and gradually fell in midair. The huge fireball was still expanding outward, and even the surrounding air was affected. The temperature sometimes soared and sometimes plummeted. It could be seen that it had completely thrown caution to the wind. It was determined to burn itself to save Xiao Chen's life. "Oh, are you Xiao Chuan?" Xiao Chen climbed up with great difficulty and looked at the guy in front of him. His clothes were torn by the explosion, and his face was covered with a layer of ash. He couldn't see anything. He could only vaguely tell from the familiar voice and way of speaking that this guy was probably Yu Xiaochuan. With that thought in mind, the hellfire of the underworld immediately recalled all of his clones and instantly condensed them into a huge bluish-purple fireball. With a whistling sound, he turned around and smashed the biohumans that were swarming toward him on the ground. If I wasn't smart, I'm afraid I'd be trapped in this valley for the rest of my life. If that's the case, I won't be able to see Xiao Chenappa anymore. Xiao Chenappa is so mighty and strong, I can't hog him for myself, or else little sister Tang Tang will definitely kill me. Sigh, what a pity. Infatuated Xiao Chen, the game of cat and mouse is over. I'd like to see who can save you this time. Seeing that the flying sword was also controlled, Miss Luan waved her hand decisively and shouted coldly. Boom. A huge explosion rang out, and a sound wave swept up a ferocious shockwave and spread out. For a moment, sand, stones and smoke filled the air. Dust and gravel filled the air, and a huge pit was blasted open on the ground. Yes, I'm little Yaya. The newcomer stomped her feet lightly and pouted coquettishly. Xiao Chenappa, you're so naughty. How could you forget my looks? Master, I'm here to save you. Seeing the situation on Xiao Chen's side, and Xiaomao immediately broke free from Situ Haotian's left hand, controlled the flying sword to rush over, and directly swung the sword to cut off the heads of several biohumans. The figure's toes gently touched the ground, and he jumped out of the big pit caused by the explosion. His toes touched the lake again and his body flew into the air again. The hellfire of the underworld was still around Miss Luan, but after seeing this scene he couldn't care less. His main duty was to protect his master, Xiao Chen. Now that his master was in trouble, even if he had to sacrifice his own life, even if he had to kill his family, he must help him out. However, when he was about to continue to kill, he found that the two biohumans in front of him were the parents that Tang Tang had just called for. He suddenly stopped and couldn't kill them. Although Yu Xiaochuan looked a little angry, he felt sweet in his heart at this time. After all, since he entered the world of cultivation, he had been looking for Xiao Chen's whereabouts. Now that his wish had finally come true, he was naturally happy. But this time Xiao Chen was not so lucky. In the case of multitasking, he had no time to dodge. He was hit several times in a row, and even his protective primordial chi was broken. He took a few steps back and his legs went soft. He knelt on the ground, opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. And Xiaomao was still thinking about how to bypass them and cut other biohumans. Unexpectedly, Tang Tang's parents suddenly reached out their hands and grabbed the flying sword directly. Xiao Chenappa. What a coincidence to meet you here. You don't know I've been looking for you so anxiously. Landing lightly beside Xiao Chen, the person looked at Xiao Chen's face excitedly, but it didn't take long for his eyebrows to furrow, and said with a little anger, Xiao Chenappa, how did you get hurt? Who beat you up like this? Hurry up and tell them, I'll avenge you and kill them all. Because Xiao Chen was injured, he could no longer control Situ Haotian with his mind. Situ Haotian finally regained his consciousness, but he had exhausted his energy. He collapsed to the ground involuntarily, foaming at the corner of his mouth, and fainted. Xiao Chen naturally understood the intention of the flame of the underworld, but he couldn't watch his father be killed in front of him. What's more, among these biohumans were Cheng Minjing's uncle and Tang Tang's parents. He couldn't bear such a heavy sin. Instead of letting the flame of the underworld kill them, it was better to be killed himself. The figure floating in the air swept the surroundings with his extremely sharp eyes. Suddenly, as if he had discovered a new continent, his pupils burst with a burst of extraordinary splendor. In an instant, he displayed an inconceivably enchanting movement technique and rushed towards his destination like a graceful swallow. On the other side, Sidu Qitian had been cut by his godfather's flying sword to the point of dying. He lay on the ground unconscious with his eyes rolled and twitched from time to time. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.